Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Board of Supervisors, regular meeting, for February 2nd to order. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence. Thank you. One item that I would like to see if we can change is under old business, moving up the courthouse project to 1 and the other 2 items to follow. I did confirm with Ms. Bond and with Mark that they could stick around a little extra time.
Madam Chair, with that revision of the order of the agenda, I move that we adopt it.
Thank you.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Now we have the presentation from Superintendent Grimsley.
Good afternoon from Panther Nation. It is hard to believe we are already at this point in the year, and January for such a short month was actually truly remarkable, even with all the very strange winter weather that greeted us shortly after holiday break. Even still, our Panthers were able to achieve great things, including becoming world record holders, by the way, for helping harvest nearly 900 chili peppers off of a single pepper plant. Only school in the whole world that has that title, just saying. This week, students will be celebrating the 100th day of school. We've had to keep pushing that back with minus the ice days that we've had. So you may see some very tiny 100-year-olds walking around the elementary school this week. They're also celebrating the 100th day by emphasizing 100 acts of kindness, where students are invited to record acts of kindness on heart-shaped cutouts, and all the hearts will be used to create a tree of kindness in the elementary school lobby. Each grade level is also being challenged to collect 100 boxes of cereal to donate to the food pantry. Last month, the RCHS Scholastic Bowl team took home the gold in the Bull Run District Tournament. Ruth Cassette received first team All-District, and Jamison Snelson received second team All-District. We are so proud of our Rappahannock Scholar Bull Run District champions. Our CES students participated in a school-wide spelling bee last month, showcasing their talents in phonological awareness and literacy. Each class participated in their own spelling bees and sent the grade level winners on to the school-wide tournament. Congratulations to our winners, Zaylon Mosley and Jack LaRock. The start of the second semester brought the rollout of many new experiences for students, including a gifted art residency mentorship program for gifted art students with Elena Kashmir at her studio in Flint Hill, a new public safety course in partnership with the Sheriff's Office, exploring various fields in public safety, fire and rescue, criminal justice, and communications, as well as earning life-supporting certifications. A new Reimagined Carpentry 1 class taught by Class A Virginia contractor Jim Waters, president of Stillwaters Construction, bringing hands-on experience, certifications, and service learning components to the program. The rollout of a catering banquet specialization for our advanced culinary arts students interested in large-scale food production and event-based hospitality. An applied brain science and health course taught by PE teacher Lauren Williams in collaboration with assistant principal and CTE director Ms. Jody Place, offered as an advanced physical education course that integrates foundational neuroscience, mental health literacy, and principles of wellness. A reimagined Teachers for Tomorrow course taught by Principal Dr. B, fostering student interest, understanding, and appreciation for the teaching profession, allowing secondary students to explore careers in education, as well as earn their paraprofessional teacher certification. The full rollout of our active learning and outdoor spaces and farm to table through the Commit to Be Fit program, promoting environmental stewardship and healthy living, already world record winning in that class. I really encourage you to please take a look, though, at this month's division newsletter, which I linked in my report, for more information on all of this and so much more. As you can see, we have so many great things going on in our small and mighty school system, even while navigating challenging winter weather scenarios. And we thank you all for all that you do to support our students and staff. We look forward to the joint school board and board of supervisors meeting next week to discuss our instructional and operational needs and challenges as we're developing the fiscal year 27 school budget. We will be meeting in the RCES gym at 6:30 p.m. next Tuesday night, and look forward to further discussing plans to accomplish major capital improvements in partnership with the community. As always, thank you for your questions, as well as providing the opportunity to clarify any areas of concern.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Dr. Grimsley, I just had a question about enrollment.
Sure.
And I know you haven't been here forever, although you've been here a while, so you might not, know the number I'm seeking off the top of your head. Maybe Dr. Bolt does. 10 years ago, or we'll just say at its height, how many students on average were in the high school building each day? Do you know?
Each day 10 years ago?
More or less. I mean, if you were.
It was approximately, I think, close to 800. Oh, just at the high school.
High school.
That's total K-12 enrollment.
Yeah, so in the high school building, a decade ago.
Gosh, I'd have to look up the number for you, probably around 350. It's never been that too high.
375, and how many today?
327?
Okay,
That's about right.
all right. And then in the elementary school, just thinking back 10 years ago compared to today.
I'd have to, again, look. I'm not exactly sure. It's in my enrollment projections in my
Yeah,
report every
I
year.
think in advance of next Tuesday's meeting, as we talk about capital projects,
Yeah.
it would be, maybe we could, since we're gonna use more time to get an answer, maybe go back even 20 years. Can't believe I've lived here longer than that. So let's go back to maybe year 2000 and just do a trend line from 2000 through today, average daily enrollment.
Yep.
Or you call it average daily membership.
And I did provide a lot of that information to the Planning Commission for the comprehensive plan
Sure,
update, so I
yeah.
can pull that directly from there.
Yeah, so if you could just trace average daily membership over time for the last, call it, 2.5 decades, for each building, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And then my only other question is, you mentioned this active learning initiative.
Yep.
I brought this up before, and I guess this would be a good time to bring it up again. I just wonder to what extent, if any, you are engaged with the Shenandoah National Park administration to bolster, supplement, or otherwise support these kinds of efforts within our public school.
Oh, yes, and once in a while, we do receive some opportunities from them. We hope to definitely enhance that relationship with the new angle that this is going with our farm-to-table ag specialty and conservation focus. So hopefully that will come into play, especially now that we have a new face in the building under farm-to-table. And that whole initiative is entirely grant-funded, so just to make sure that's clear.
Okay, great. And then on that point, one obvious side of the Shenandoah National Park that is not always the case in all of our national parks in the United States, but it's very important, is its cultural history.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to mention, I've mentioned this both to the Rappahannock County Historical Society and others, that we have the benefit of a resident in our community who's also my constituent, Evan Childress, who is, I believe he's now the assistant superintendent for cultural resources. I might not have that title exactly right, but I really encourage you and other organizations with common interests to take full advantage of the fact that we have him living in our community. Mm-hmm. And he's an extremely bright and dynamic person. And so to the extent that this active learning environmental stewardship initiative might overlap with the national park, it decidedly, I would think, would overlap with the park's cultural history. And I hope that you'll be in touch with Mr. Childress, and I can help in that regard.
Thank you.
Thanks, that's all I have.
Ms. Comer?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that I received the notice. I hesitate before I say this word, but it's not hidden in a way in a direction that most people in this room will think. I received the notice about buses and the behavior on.
Yes.
So I just wanted to take a moment, especially since we have dedicated so much time and money and many years to the discussion of buses, that anyone in this room who may have a child, a grandchild, a niece, a neighbor, anyone in this room who comes in contact with our students, our kids in the county, we all have a responsibility to model good behavior for them, and we want our kids to model good behavior for the younger kids on our buses. So I was kind of a little, not shocked, but a little sad to get that notice, only because it had to be stated. So hopefully the adults in our community can take own up to their responsibility in teaching our children how to behave.
And I am confident that they will. We have
Yes,
great families,
absolutely.
so, yes.
Mr. Settle?
Good.
You're good. Mr. Geno?
Yeah, I just had a couple things I wanted to bring up. I look forward to our meeting next Tuesday. We get into some of the details. I think, following on the comments of Mr. Whitston, if we think about the declining enrollment over the last 10 or 20 years, we still have to replace a roof. And we still have a lot of fixed costs just to keep the doors open, regardless of having 950 to 1,000 or 700 students. And I think one of the really important numbers we have to understand is what if we added 200 students to the school magically, overnight, what expenses would go up? And my guess is not very many expenses would go up. And it seems like we really dwell on the average cost to educate a student, but that's the wrong number. The correct number is how much does it cost to add a student, and how much do we get from the state for adding a student? How much do we get in additional funds from students paying for coming from out of county? So I look forward to those numbers. I think those are numbers that, looking at fixed versus variable costs, I think are the way that we can start to understand the way, how the school is financially in a better spot, and how we can make sure we're funding the school in a responsible way. And Ms. Comer, I learned things on the bus as a kid that I didn't know beforehand.
Yes.
Yes. Hopefully we're decreasing that learning on the bus.
Driving a lot more frequently than, I can see, yeah. I just give a huge shout out to bus drivers. They have an incredibly difficult job, and now with increased ridership on the buses, since we've brought it down to 13 routes, yeah, of course, those behaviors may become more prevalent. We just want to stay ahead of it and make sure we're all on the same page.
Thank you. One, I think it's fabulous that the sheriff's office stepped up and are doing this class. I mean, when I saw the picture, I did look at your division newsletter. I mean, it looks like you've got a lot of interested students, which is fabulous, and such a large participation out of the sheriff's office. So I'm really glad to see that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The banquet and catering course, I mean, kids in April could have a job probably around here if they do well in catering and banquet. I mean, it was one of my first jobs I was probably 17 at the time. And it's such an easy job to do, catering specific tasks and helping out with the businesses around here that have such nice events. That's exciting to me that the kids will be able to use their learnings pretty quickly if they choose to. And then, let's see what else I have. One question, I was told, and I didn't watch it, that during your school board meeting, the last one, a young lady brought up the point that not having the EMS classes and how sad she is that there's no option. And just trying to figure out, we do have the governor's school in Fauquier, and I know Laurel Ridge does some things, but I have no idea. Is there somewhere that these children that are very interested in the EMS world could choose almost as a dual enrollment to take a EMT or EMR class?
Yeah, so the EMR class that we were offering was a great partnership that we've all been really trying to get somebody to be in on that. So public safety was sort of a different reimagination of that, where we could use some of the grant funds that we had received for that program, so that can still happen, and they will still get basic life support skills and certifications through that. Students who are interested in EMT or EMS and other things can always take an option to be released to go take those courses on site. And I know Dr. Boyne showed interest and told me she wanted to reach out to that student in particular to see if she'd like to be a student ambassador for starting up something more grassroots and with the fire companies and trying to bring that in. So we are super interested in that. It's just the numbers and the resources to be able to make it happen as much as we would like to, but we are working on it.
Okay, I just want to understand the roadblocks and see if we can, because obviously it's very important to all of the county.
It is. Having someone on site coming into the building where students are able to be without some of the barriers of cost. Enrollment costs the student. These courses didn't cost anything for the student. So that's what we're trying to maintain through our career and tech ed department and certification funding and grant funding, if we can support that. So when they have to leave campus, transportation, different programs in different areas, it's just tough to get a whole group or a cohort together to build a program that way.
Okay, so maybe knowing the lowest number that would make the progress or the project make sense. So is it 5 kids or is it 7 kids or what do you need? And then what's out there that maybe we could find a way to get them to and from since it's so important to our community.
Absolutely.
Okay. Did you have something?
Just following on Debbie's point, I'd mentioned a meeting or two ago to you that I thought there was real opportunity. It's easy for me to sit here and throw out ideas, so you can disavow me of my belief that this is like a good idea, but I still think it's a good idea for whatever that's worth. And that's just trying to achieve economies of scale vis-a-vis RAPC as one organization and Laurel Ridge is the other, because we're talking about a pretty small community in which we live, and there is a certain amount of duplicative effort, including on sort of vocational nurse training, EMT training, et cetera. So it's just, I would just encourage you all to continue talking to one another, talking to the RAPC board members, talking to folks like Ms. Comer, and figuring out where maybe through some new ways of thinking, a curriculum around some of these vocational areas of interest could be developed that doesn't require reinventing the wheel and starting from scratch.
Oh, absolutely, and that's been a focus area of ours for quite some time too. So RAPC is hosting our CCMA course right now for us. It doesn't make sense to hire a full-time person and try to get somebody on board to do those courses because we wouldn't be able to fill them, you know, and people don't want to come to work for just a portion of that sometimes. But we have reimagined quite a bit, CTE especially, where you need career tech professionals to teach with those credentials, to do more of an adjuncting in collaboration with Laurel Ridge quite a bit, especially with the changes in dual enrollment. So a lot has been reimagined at the high school. That's why all those new opportunities that I mentioned can happen, because now they can be sort of singleton this time of day offering with an adjunct person that can teach just that course for our students and still get credentials. So that's been a way, rather than trying to fill a schedule with a one FTE, it's more, okay, we're building up from the other side. Here's the schedule, here's the course interest, here's the labor industry market, and that's how we have to tailor our career in tech.
So I would say look west to the national park.
Yes.
Build a relationship there, look east to
Sure.
Laurel Ridge and build a relationship there, because
Yes.
I think that will provide more opportunities to our students and save us all money in the long run.
Awesome.
Well, real quick, just in case the right person is listening, the number one barrier in offering CTE education is instructors.
Yeah.
Period.
Yep.
And so if you have talent, if that person is listening, call Dr. Grimsley or me.
Please do.
Mr. Shuttle, I think.
Yeah, real quickly, I'm gonna change gears a little bit
Sure.
to Mother Nature and the snowstorm
Okay.
that we've all been living through here the last week or so, and obviously with the cold temperatures and the school closing and a lot of questions, when we're gonna get back to school, and just asking some of my nieces and nephews the other day. Most of them went, we love staying home, but we know that's, that's not the reality. My question to you is there a contingency plan? Say if it remains cold and it looks like it's going to remain cold, it's heating, the temperatures are coming up a little bit, and well, we're a Mother Nature's beck and call here and at her disposal. But when we close schools, and then is there a contingency plan if we get to a certain point where we're going back virtual, or is there an opportunity for a pickup of children at a safe location? And I know safety has got to be paramount. And that's, yeah.
Yeah, great. I'm so glad you asked that, because these are ongoing discussions all of the time, where one year we did try to implement snow routes, and this was before I was superintendent, and it was kind of a disaster. Parents couldn't get down to where the snow routes were meeting, especially with something like this. If I'm sure all of your driveways were the same as mine initially, and then your yards and things, trying to get to those areas. However, what VDOT has been exceptional with us, and I think they did a great job on our main routes. And today and a little bit over the weekend, they were working with our transportation team in depth, working on our turnarounds. And a lot of our bus routes, it wasn't so much that they were too slick, they were so narrow. We couldn't get down those areas to get the kids, and then the parents were telling us we can't get out to get there anyway, if you were. So we feel confident we'll be able to open up tomorrow on a 2-hour delay. That notice already went out. They, by the end of today, have our last turnaround wait spot clearing. So hopefully, we know there's going to be some refreezing that we're still worried about. That's why a 2-hour delay. Now with instructional days, that's where we really focus our attention, with education. And we are monitoring data right now to look at maybe next week. We have a parent-teacher conference day, a professional learning day, and then there's a Monday holiday in our calendar for February. Potentially proactively looking at those days as some makeups. So I have the principals reviewing data, looking at their division leadership team, and seeing if they can adjust pacing. And if not, if we hit 10 days, it automatically starts pulling from spring break. And we know we're going to have horrible attendance if we start pulling there, just because people have already booked their vacations, It's just the way it is. And virtual days are problematic. So we did send, a lot of our teachers have been interacting with students and sending things home. My kids have been very, very busy, and I have one in the elementary, 2 at the high school. So they have been getting work. It's not obligatory completely, but it keeps pace up. If you want a virtual learning day, you actually have to run your school cafeterias and send meals and have pickups for meals. So if students can come get the meals, they probably should come to school. So that's why we don't declare a remote learning day, but we're trying to do the interactions with, our students as best we can to keep the learning up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, next we have public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, please come up to the mic and give us your name and your district.
Ann Yeoman, Piedmont District. First of all, our appointments for this first Saturday of tax filing are pretty much full. We'll be doing every Saturday through April 11th. But in relation to that last question about the students getting and so forth, I have 2 questions that really are relevant to VDOT and VDOT's handling of an enormously challenging situation. One is, why can't we have the sand barrels back? So places where it was very steep, if we had had the sand barrels, that would have helped a lot. The other is, and this is really more relevant to VDOT's question, is at least on our road, when the plows came through, thankfully, but now there was an ice dam like this at the end of the driveway. So some plowing contractors are nice and they make sure that doesn't happen, but others just pile it up. And so parents being able to get down to the road is kind of a challenge. So something to think about in the future. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I hope you guys encourage your constituents to use free tax filing.
Thank you. Sheila.
Hi, Sheila Gressinger, Hampton District. I wasn't going to talk today, but then I started thinking, I've heard so many conversations over a period of time about the population numbers in the schools and how they're diminishing. and what is being done about it. And I want you all to think of an iceberg. You have the tip of the iceberg, and that's your school where the population is diminishing. But there's much more to it than that. Beneath that iceberg are the changing demographics that we've had over years of an aging demographic, of loss of housing. There are all kinds of reasons why we don't have enough kids to go to our schools. So in my opinion, it's more than the school's responsibility to be finding ways to keep their student population up so they can qualify for various grants and funding and everything. To me, I think it's the entire county's responsibility, and they need to step up and address this housing in a way to get more families living here. And that's all different kinds of things that we've had through the Board of Supervisors with ways to subdivide land, family land, to be able to provide housing there as well. So that's just my appeal to the county as a whole. And since you all are representing the whole county, I'm appealing to you all as well to think deep and well into how we can resolve this crisis, I think, of kids in our schools, which we need very much. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, not seeing any hands in the courtroom. We have quite a few people on Zoom. Anyone wishing to speak during public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. All right, not seeing any Zoom hands raised, I will close public comment. Thank you. All right, the consent agenda was presented. Any
I presume members will want to pull the minutes off like last month because of for December.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to pull the minutes, and I'd also like to pull item 6, please, which is the purchase of an EMS ventilator.
Okay,
And with that, I'll move that we adopt the consent agenda minus the December minutes and item 6.
I'll second that.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, Mr. Whitson?
I move that we go ahead and adopt the December meeting minutes.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'll recuse myself from the voting.
Okay, thank you.
Same here.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Great, thanks. My only question on item 6 was not the substance of it, and I want to thank Ms. Clark, Mr. Stevens, Mr. Damcott, and others in our EMS leadership who are thinking ahead and recognize the importance of having ventilators in the field. I certainly benefited from such technology, and I think our citizens deserve to also benefit. My only question really was for Mr. Curry. I note that that this is requiring a board decision. I just want to understand the mathematics and make sure that we're clean on this. It seems that there's a $25,000 trigger, yet there's grant funding that is reducing the total acquisition cost of this EMS equipment below the $25,000 threshold. So if you just confirm my understanding that the $25,000 threshold is triggered before the application of any non-general fund support for something like this. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that policy is based on the purchase value, not
Okay.
a net cost
I
to
see.
the citizens or something like that. So,
Okay,
yeah.
great. I move that we go ahead and approve the appropriation for item 6, which is the EMS ventilator.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That'll be a great addition. Thank you for that. All right, moving into appointments. Mr. Curry, I see we had,
Yes, as you recall from your last meeting, there was a vacancy on the CPMT and it was filled for the private provider. Your current parent representative, her term ends February 5th, and so, and indicated that she was unable to continue serving for a different term. Ms. Crooks has been looking for potential candidates and identified Ms. Danielle Nikki Henry, who submitted an application this morning. There is no state requirement for term length on these. Ms. Crooks thinks that 1 or 2 years would make sense for somebody who's not been in CPMT before, and so each side can get to know each other. So if it's the pleasure of the board, you can make an appointment of Ms. Henry for the length of time that you so desire, and I would ask you to waive those informalities because she is not present with us today as required by the policy.
Mr. Curry, Ms. Donahue, I'm sorry. I'll put forward a motion to appoint Ms. Henry to a 2-year term concluding December 31st, 2027 to the Rappahannock County Community Policy Management Team.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'm only concerned, is she available for day meetings?
Yeah, we had discussed the meeting schedule, and she does not believe that will present an issue.
Wonderful. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we're going into old business in the new order. Andrew, hopefully you don't mind me calling you Andrew. If you'd come up and speak to us about the courthouse project.
Printed these out for board members.
Glad to do it.
It will rise up if you need.
Is that better? Okay.
Thanks.
Well, good afternoon. Happy to see you again in the new year. So just a bit of a recap. We are at a place where we are, have done one of 2 things that are part of our current engagement with you, which was a further study of the courthouse with the eye towards reducing scale and potentially reducing cost from the previous concept from May of 2025. We have done one of the 2 things that we've been tasked with. One is that we have presenting a revised design to you today. And then we have underway the cost estimate for estimating the revised cost of the new concept. And we expect that to be released in the middle of the month. So we will forward that on to Gary, and presumably he will get that to you as soon as it's available. So the packet that you have before you is first starts with
And always the risk of handing a piece of paper out as you guys are jumping way ahead of Mr. Moore. So try to constrain yourself and let him guide you through. It's meant to be a takeaway.
Yeah, you're supposed to hand this out at the end, Gary. Right?
Sorry.
So the first several pages are a recap from the most recent concept that we presented back in May of '25. And you may recall, those of you who were on the board previously, that this was actually a revision, a downsizing of a previous concept that we had presented earlier in that year. So just to quickly run through where we were in 2025, the site plan, which is the first page, shows the footprint of the building. We had actually selected one of 2 options for this. The first option that was not selected had secure parking below the building, so actually in the lowest level of the building. And the concept, that option that was selected by the board to move forward with favorably was pulling that outside of the building footprint. So that's what you can see here on the site plan. This plan is oriented so that north is up on the page, and so south of the building, you can see there are 4 parking spaces that would be designated for judges, and then the balance of the secure parking on the east side would be for other court staff and designated personnel. Just to orient you, if you've never looked at this site plan before, on the left of the page, or the western side of the page, is Gay Street, and this site is right over there at the end of the courthouse row, courthouse green. So the next page, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these, but just to orient you to the previous concept's floor plan, ground level access onto the floor that would have both the circuit court clerk and the combined courts clerk. So the sort of public-facing aspects of the clerk are both readily available from the front door, as well as some public restroom and screening facilities. And then the back is staff only. And then the upper level is where the courtrooms are envisioned to occur. So you would actually go up an open stair, up the elevators, and then there would be a smaller and a larger courtroom established by previous programming studies. There's also the judge's chambers at the rear of this level, and then the combined jury assembly deliberation room. And then the next page shows the selected option for the lower level. As I mentioned, there were a couple things we studied, one which was to have parking actually within the building footprint, and the option that we chose to move forward with, the board chose to move forward with, was pulling that parking outside of the building envelope. The remaining program area within the building envelope is mechanical support space, and then the main prisoner holding areas. The balance of that footprint, we had a couple of options, one which was to have it be unexcavated space, and then the second option was there would be shelved space for future use, so unfinished space. And then finally, you can see the west and south elevations as they were conceived in this May 25 concept, presented onto the courthouse green. It's a two-story building with all of the occupied space, with the exception of the holding rooms in the basement, were daylit with windows all around. So you can see that the top view, the west elevation, is the view straight on from Gay Street, and then the south elevation would be the view if you were to look straight out the courthouse here to the north. And then the final page in that package was the comparison, kind of context that shows the relative heights of the proposed design with the historic courthouse and then the accessory buildings that are in between. The two dashed lines you can see that run across the page, which you'll see in each successive version I'm going to show you in just a minute. The lower one is calibrated to the peak of the roof of the existing courthouse that we're in, and then the upper line is the top of the cupola of the existing courthouse. Any questions before I move on? Okay.
And I should mention, the document that I'm paging through is posted to board docs for those who want to zoom in and look at it themselves.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, so the next page is the first page of our revised concept, so the work product that we've been tasked with. And this is to where we had 3 levels in the May 25 concept, we are now 2 levels. And the top level would be the one that's entered at grade from Gay Street and the plaza in front. And then the lower level, which has half of the program of the building, is actually below that level. And I'll explain how that works in just a minute. You can see here on the site plan that we are entering the secure parking, again, from the south. And we have a combined lot right now with all of the needed secure spaces in one fenced area. And then we also have a second entry into the building at that level that is a vehicle sally port for prisoner vans. And then, you know, from a site planning standpoint, again, our intention is to maintain that relative front relationship of the front of the new courthouse with the rest of the buildings that set up that geometry, as you can see it go down Gay Street along the courthouse green. Okay, the next page. And by the way, let me reiterate that we had 3 levels before, and we're now kind of reconfiguring the building to be on 2 levels. It just so happens that the grade level doesn't change a great deal in terms of its configuration. We still have a main entry, we still have security screening, we have a public lobby space, ready access to men's and women's public toilets, access to the elevator, and an open stair which takes you now down instead of up. The clerks are still relatively arranged in the same position that they were before. The difference now is that the judges' chambers are on this floor. So as we rebalanced the square footages between three floors to two, that was one thing that we did in order to balance it out and make the footprints of the two levels roughly the same. So instead of having their relationship directly with the courtrooms, their relationship is with the clerks. So the kind of, that restricted access area is for staff only on this floor. You also notice that there are two elevators on the eastern end of the building. And this is, you might ask the question why, and the reason is that there's a very distinct goal in designing courthouses to prevent the populations from crossing. So in other words, you want to try to keep the constitutional officers and the court not crossing paths with prisoners and also not crossing paths with the public. And so by necessity, by the way that we have the geometry of this building worked out, there needs to be two elevators that are accessible to the court staff and to the judges in order to get to the two courtrooms below so that they don't cross the pathways of the prisoners. And you can see that on the next page. So you can see we have the prisoner solid port there on the eastern end of the building, and then we have a series of prisoner handling areas, holding cells and so forth that run up the middle of the building like a spine, a courtroom on either side of that, and then at the rear in this sort of minty green color, you can see the two areas that are available for court staff to circulate. One design feature that we're trying to maintain is some degree of natural light, which gets into the lower level of this building. So in terms of the courtroom weighting, our design includes a cupola that we would like to actually be top lit, so actually brings light in from the roof and then allows the natural light to filter down. And then we are also maintaining windows on the courtrooms themselves. So you can see on the south side, we're biting into the hill there, and we have to kind of build that out with a retaining wall. But we want to try to get that natural light into the courtrooms. And then on the north side of the building, a little more straightforward because the grade drops away there. And then, of course, the jury deliberation and assembly space, we thought it was important to have some windows in that as well. Okay, and then the next page, you can get a sense of what this means from an elevation standpoint. You can see the west elevation at the top, and now the building presents itself as a single-story building. And then you can see in the south elevation how the building cascades down the hill. So it's essentially a walkout basement arrangement. You come in on the upper level and then walk down that public stair, open stair to get to the lower level. You can see on the south elevation the service entrance there on the far right, the Sally Port entrance, and then to the left of that, some mechanical room entrances. And then as you walk to the left, you can see the windows that would allow daylight into the courtrooms. And one thing we're also building in as a feature here is that the sill of those windows, we'd like to be above vision height. In other words, you don't want somebody necessarily to be able to walk right by and look in your courtroom. The next page shows again that graphic of the relative heights of the existing historic courthouse and the new proposed courthouse. And then the next page is a comparison showing the May 25 concept compared to the concept we have before you today. Now, one of the additional features of this study that we were asked to look at was a little bit of an austerity study. So you'll see in the next series of pages a version of the same concept without the portico and without the cupola. We would still propose to have a skylight over the area that is the open stair that leads to the lower level. But to get that light in, you don't necessarily have to have a cupola. So the site plan is essentially the same as the previous concept.
Andrew, would you pull the building forward in this?
Yes, we probably would. Yeah, I think that would be an adjustment we would make to this concept to maintain that same relationship. Thank you for pointing that out. The next page is the floor plan, which is essentially unchanged, except that it has no portico at the front door. And then we also haven't changed the lower level. You might note that there's some building storage there on the far western side of the plan, the left side. That was the footprint of the portico from the previous study we did, the previous concept. For the sake of having apples to apples on the cost side, we left it in. So, you know, that is a place we could talk about as we get deeper into the details, whether we keep that or not. And then the next page shows a version of the west elevation and the south elevation without the portico and without the cupola. Next page shows the relative heights again. And then I have a series of images here that are just showing the two together, so you can see them in comparison. West elevation, south elevation. And then a comparison of the street view. And then the last page is just a summary table of the square footage. I think what's notable here is that the total area is essentially the same. It's slightly larger with the revised concept within 2% of the original one. And, you know, as we get deeper into the design, we may be able to actually get that equivalent. I'm not sure. But there's also some built-in, there's going to be some variability between the two just because you're taking 3 plans and putting it into 2 plans. So I'm not sure we can get necessarily 1-to-1, but we're pretty darn close.
And you've gone from about, 10,480 square feet per floor to 12,575 per floor because you had to accommodate the space that was in the basement.
Exactly. Yeah.
Although it's squeezed and contorted a little bit in the new.
We had to balance out the two, basically, yeah. So that's my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
I've got a question for you. if I may.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm looking at the drawing of the, I guess it's the south elevation, second to last page there, and it shows the cupola being like right in the center of the metal roof. What will that illuminate below?
So it's a little hard to tell because we don't have it side by side, but that's roughly speaking directly above the opening in the open stair.
Oh, okay, so this drawing just, it would actually be moved forward towards the Gay Street side of the building.
Well, again, it's a little hard to tell. Yes, it may be maybe slightly forward, but the intent is that it's illuminating the opening in the stair.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Whitson?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I just have 3 questions. Number one, I know that Ms. Smith raised the idea of imposing austerity measures and reducing kind of we'll call it the decorative or aesthetic elements on the front of the building. So as you don't have to answer this today because it's really a cost-related question, but when you come back with your cost estimate, I think it would be helpful for all of us and the public to know how much savings more or less can be tied to those austerity measures you imposed on the most stripped down, scaled down design.
Right.
Because you know, we want to build an attractive building, and if we're not gaining much in cost savings, I don't know why we would, you know, basically impose upon ourselves such a simple structure without some of the classic architectural elements. My second question to you is just based on your understanding of courthouses around the Commonwealth of Virginia. How often do you see subterranean courtrooms that perhaps have natural light challenges? We'll leave it at that. And then finally, I always thought that the 2-story scale looked pretty good in the context of our existing courthouse, and then the revenue commissioner and treasurer's offices in between. I just want to get your gut feeling when you look at this now as kind of a 1-story building on Courthouse Row. Do you think, in your in your opinion, does it still look good and does the scale still fit? Those are my questions.
Yeah, fair questions. So on the cupola and the portico costs, I'll be interested to see what the savings actually is on that. I think it's going to be relatively minor compared to the rest of the building, and it really just becomes a question for you all. You know, is that something you want to?
And staff will then put it in terms of debt service as well, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Is it
But if it's
$10 per year, or is it?
right, yeah, I mean, I think, for me, I think if we're talking about de minimis savings, then, you know, let's not get hung up on that, is kind of where I'm going.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple ways to look at those elements in particular, you know, from an architectural heritage standpoint. Both are architectural elements that signify civic architecture. You know, the portico is
Yeah.
classic. It also serves a practical purpose of, you know, allowing you to stand outside the doors and not be in the elements. You know, the classic courthouse steps, you know, conversation, right? Having a place for that's not such a bad thing. The cupola is also a signifier of this is an important government building,
Right.
you know. Now, you can look across the Commonwealth and find examples that are across the spectrum on these elements. You know, the Jefferson's model for courthouses didn't have a cupola. You know, they did have a portico, but they didn't have a cupola, you know, and so, you know, you can make the argument a number of different ways. But as you look at this context, and you have a building here with a cupola, you know, it seems to me that if you want to try to establish a stature for the new courthouse that has some presence, you know, having a cupola there seems an appropriate move.
And you also have the church just over there that has the big bell tower.
That's right.
Yeah.
So like civic buildings having a vertical element's a classic thing. On your question about the natural light in courtrooms, it is very common for courtrooms to not have natural light. You know, there's a planning reason for that. When you have especially gained courtrooms, and you have to solve for that circulation pattern, one of the strategies that you often do is you have them bookended around those prisoner handling elevator clusters, which by necessity puts some of the courtrooms interior. So that is not uncommon. What you'll see as a strategy oftentimes for those types of courtrooms is to have a top light, you know, to have a skylight or something that allows light in. And if you have a small courtroom or a small courthouse, having the availability of the exterior wall is a viable option as well. You know, so when we did our first round on this, you know, that was part of our driver for the design was to have that natural light. I think it does bring some qualities to the courtroom that you lose if you don't have it, but it can be done. I worry a little bit about the waiting room, you know, the waiting areas. Having recently sat through, had to go to JNDR court with my daughter for a ticket, and you see the kind of human drama that happens in those waiting areas. You know, it's like, gosh, it'd be nice to be able to see outside.
Yeah.
So that's why we put that top light, you know, as sort of a gesture to at least get some natural light in there. And at least you get into the courtroom itself, and now it's a place with some natural light, so. Your last question.
And my last question was just about, now that we're dramatically reducing sort of the vertical.
Oh, right, the massing.
Yeah.
So, I think that the new design has some presence. And you'll notice that the portico, the gable end in the center is deliberately raised up. And that's part of that strategy, is to try to give it some scale. I'm also imagining that when you walk in those doors, that's a higher ceiling space, you know, and has some presence. So I think it's not, it doesn't have as much presence as the two-story scheme, but I don't think it's a bad scale either. So I think that, you know, I could see the argument either way.
And Madam Chair, I would, just thinking ahead, I know that Andrew is on the hook for eventually a public session where we gotta show the plan, and I think the temptation would be to settle on a plan and then say, this is our plan. But looking at this and having read a recent letter to the editor in the Rappahannock News, I'm still not sure that everyone's really paying attention to this iterative process. And So I think to the extent it wouldn't muddy the waters, when we do a public presentation, I think it would be useful for people to see, not necessarily that these are options, but to show we
Progression.
went from the point A to point B and now we're here and this is, and then obviously the cost part of it is going to be a critical talking point to broadcast out to people, like, this is what we started with, we reduced cost by X, and this is where we ended up, and here's what it looks like. But I think it would be useful for people to see a side-by-side, like Andrew's done here.
No, I agree.
That's all, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for the presentation. This is my first time on this side of the table with courthouse discussion, but it looks to me like we've given up about 6,000 square feet of unfinished basement space. And that's basically what we sacrificed, and I don't see anything else that we lost. All of the other offices and functions exist.
Yeah, it's equivalent. That's correct.
Equivalent. So I guess my question is, if we look down Courthouse Row, we're moving everybody into this new structure except the registrar, commissioner of revenue, and the treasurer?
Correct.
Is that right? And so we have those three offices that would be,
Well, essentially, two buildings would then be freed up, this building and the clerk's
next
office.
door? Yeah, okay.
And the Commonwealth's attorney, they have a touchdown space in the new building, but they're retaining their office across the
Across the
street.
street. Okay. Okay, so I mean, so the unfinished space would probably be more than we would ever need, I guess, is what I was trying to
Yeah,
drive
so
at.
how long is the building gonna be functional and how long is ever?
Right.
So,
The life of the
We are,
bond.
we are
the
trying to
life of the
get,
bond. Well, in the life of the bond, maybe you wouldn't need it, and of course, if they put a 30-year bond on this building, it would have been long paid for. But in the 40s or 50s, they came in and did a lot of work, they dug out a partial basement for the boiler, they moved this upstairs, and so, those sort of opportunities are not there for you. My perspective, I love flexibility for local government that's not gonna go out of business, long-term, but there are consequences to building in that flexibility. And the other concept doesn't necessarily require unfinished basement. That area could be a slab on grade just below the upper floor. So it'd just be dirt.
Yeah. And we,
And the-
we quantified that to be somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000, the cost of actually building an unfinished basis versus not.
Okay.
and just for clarity, part of this is also to get the office space that's over by the library here, so that we're all in Gay Street.
Yeah.
And we're renting space down at 311 Gate Street.
So we already have some uses for these.
Yeah, so the clerk's
Yeah.
office would, not that it's been decided, the clerk's office would be a good fit for building and zoning.
Yeah.
And perhaps downstairs would be a good use for county administration. This space would continue to be used for public meetings, for planning commission, board of supervisors, et cetera, et cetera. With some needed renovation. I mean, there's no central air conditioning downstairs in this building, just window units. That's the sort of thing we can probably do better than that.
Hope so. The couple of things I had was, I've never met a sunlight that didn't leak.
A sunroof.
Sunroof that doesn't leak, and I like the portico idea, I'm not a fan of, I know technology has changed, but sooner or later, they leak. The slope, and obviously it's just your picture, but to me, the top one, looks like the slope between the old courthouse and the new, is more of you're not gonna have any issue with water drainage. The lower one, there looks like there's almost a bowl. And I didn't know if that was purposefully or what the,
So we did have to do some modifications to the way the grading worked between these two concepts. What you're seeing there on the upper concept is that the natural grades just continue to flow down across the plaza and then down to the adjacent building. And because we inverted the floors and we have to put the courtrooms on the lower floor and the offices above, that means we have to essentially raise up the finished floor level of the main level. In other words, you got a bigger gap down below in order to meet the grades in the back. It's kind of a complicated domino series.
The net result is that you'll see there's a retaining wall right there on the north side of the building, the left side in that image. And so we're resolving the grade with a retaining wall instead of with the natural grades.
Okay, because I know our buildings already have an issue with water accumulation next to the buildings, so I just don't want to make that worse.
And of course, this would allow continued access to around behind the old church,
Right.
where that road is now, it'd be pushed over.
That's right.
I was worried about the height looking strange, so I like the lower version for appearances better than the one that doesn't have the front extended. So I'm pleasantly surprised at this conversation, so thank you for all the hard work.
It looks pretty close to the current courthouse finished floor.
Yeah. Mr. Settle, do you have anything?
I should also caveat that we haven't had a civil engineer look at this yet. So.
These are concepts, so let's
Yeah,
not
they're
get lost
concepts.
in the concepts.
Comer? Do you have anything, Supervisor Comer?
Not at this point. There's a lot to, oh, sorry.
Thank you.
There's a lot to take in. I appreciate you doing this very much.
Yeah, I think we have a good variety of options, and now it's, what's the price difference?
I do have one question,
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair. The unfinished portion at the lower level, so I'm trying to discern here from your pictures, or your floor plans here. Maybe I just go right to the end, the last slide. So the floor plan here on the left, obviously that shows an unfinished basement. Am I right?
Sorry, say it again.
The floor plan on the left-hand side that you see, if you go all the way, is that the last slide?
That's the last slide, yeah.
Yes, so this is, the one on the right is an alternative plan.
Yes, the one on the right is the current revised plan. The one on the left is the concept from May.
From May,
Yeah.
okay. I didn't know if that was a concept. They kind of got shifted a little bit through the whole process, but that's what we started with.
Yes, that's the most recent version before the one we're presenting today, yeah.
Understood.
And you can see how, in that lower basement level, the public elevator, should it go all the way down, here is directly underneath the public elevator on that first floor
Right.
and the upper floor. If this wasn't excavated and turned into an unfinished basement, then the elevator shaft wouldn't be there, and it would just be between the two upper floors.
Correct.
All right.
Just say, Andrew, the one question or concern I had is, this back elevator has no alternate step arrangement should there be an elevator issue. And so that would mean judges would have to come up here, go around, or come around and go down the main stair and come in the main way, right? So, whereas on this side, you have the stair and the elevator.
That is correct.
And back over here, we would simply have the elevator to this, for the judge for the smaller courtroom, non-jury courtroom.
That's right.
And that's just a consequence of 10 pounds in a 15-pound can, or 15 pounds in a 10-pound can, yeah, sort of thing. So you could program in another set of steps, but it's just adding space. That's just pointing out that is a bit of a consequence and risk. And the risk is the judge would have to go to the public area, come down the public steps to come in the front way, if the elevator wasn't working for some reason.
That's right.
Which unfortunately he does here all the time.
We're trying to get away from that.
Yep.
Now, it wouldn't be the jury trials, it would be, maybe traffic court or, I don't know, something, JNDR, something that may be a little less severe. And it would only be when, they might always use this primary courtroom for typical, and this is just the overflow in longer term when things get busier.
That's right.
Yeah, Andrew, at the risk of sounding like I've been reading the Fountainhead recently, and I haven't for a while, but my question is, we hired you guys, and I was part of that decision, at least in my view, because you guys have really good taste, and You really spoke to what we have on Courthouse Row and why it's important, why what we have is architecturally important. And so you came through with a beautiful design, and we gave you free rein to come up with a design that finally landed well, I think, with the public and certainly with us, meaning the two-story construction. Then subsequent to that, we went over and over and over again on what seemed like a high-cost question that couldn't be resolved. And Mr. Curry and this board kind of led you toward an alternative design. So I guess in closing, I would just like to know why the concept we're now looking at didn't occur to you on the front end of this process.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think there were a couple things that drove it. One was maybe we didn't, have the conversation as what were the alternatives of this, but one of the assumptions we made from the initial design was that all occupied space would have natural light in it, and views. And I think that I'd still maintain that as an ideal, that if you're sitting in the waiting room, outside of the courtroom, you can be able to look out the window and see the landscape, courtroom, see the landscape, all the offices, And so by necessity, we've taken a significant portion of the program and we've now put it below grade, right? And yes, we'll get some barred light from the skylight, which may or may not leak. But, at the end of the day, you don't have the degree of natural light that you would in a fully daylit space.
So borrowing a medical term and ascribing it to the world of architecture, would you say that your standard of care for coming up with a design would be to maximize natural light to the extent possible wherever,
all things being
people
equal.
gather?
Yes, all things being equal. So in the progression of conversation around this, we've now, other kind of forces came into play that seemed to trump some of the other things that we had assumed, like, for example, reducing massing and scale. If that had been a driver right from the beginning, we may have very well come up with this concept, as an initial option. But, if you recall, the conversation at the beginning was, are we going to put an addition on the back of this?
I know.
Or are we going to do a freestanding one? That was really the conversation at that time. And to be clear, the notion of massing and scale has always been important to us. And even if you look at the streetscape view of this, you can see that in terms of the peak of the roof and the cupola, we're below it. So, there's some taking advantage of the natural slope, but still we felt like it was appropriate.
Yeah, because we hired you for specific reasons and your good taste and your design instincts, I just want to be reassured that we're not wresting that sort of architectural and aesthetic control away from you to save a few bucks, and then we end up with something that nobody likes.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to ask that question, why this hadn't come up previously.
I think that's a fair question, and I appreciate you asking it. To reassure you somewhat, I'm proud of the design we've done here too.
As I would expect you would be.
I mean, we wouldn't have put something in front of you that I was embarrassed to show.
Yeah.
So, I think this one works as well, and it just has some caveats associated with it.
I mean, I've said all along, there's a lot more public comfort with the work you have done, a lot more public comfort with the work you've done than the previous stuck-out back box that just landed with a dull thud. I know this has been a long process. I know you've been around the block before with local governments, so I'm sure you're not surprised. But we do appreciate the work you're doing a lot. So,
Appreciate that.
thank you.
Art, do you have another question?
I just want to make sure I was understanding. So the new design, the prisoners don't have to go through 3 stories.
Any elevators, no elevators for the
No
prisoners.
elevators for the prisoners. They just go right from the Sally Port into the various courtrooms for the holding.
That's
cell.
correct.
And you also have a place where the lawyer can come and
Yes.
see them through the glass. too.
That's right. Yeah,
Private space for that.
you can see that on the far left edge of the red zone there. That's the vestibule
Yeah.
that the attorney would go
This
through. to-
visit, and
Yeah.
in between would be glass.
Well, that seems like it's kind of a security improvement not to have to.
Yeah.
It-
I think we had that in the other
Well,
two, but it was.
we had to go vertically, right? You had to pop up. And yeah, I would say that there is a, silver lining to this one is that does simplify the prisoner handling scenario.
One of the things Andrew and I talked about, or he pointed out to me, was the old version has 3 elevators.
Yeah.
And all of the inmates are on one floor and don't need an elevator, and the new version has 3 elevators. Because of the consequences of keeping the inmates on one floor.
Correct.
You don't want to make the judges walk down the spiral staircase, little tiny tube.
Give them a pole maybe or something. And I will point out, light is an important design aspect. I'm terrified of below grade walls.
Yeah.
And the consequences of those in my direction to Andrews, belt suspenders, whatever comes after that. We've got to be absolutely on top of our game
Yep.
when we have occupied spaces up against basement retaining walls,
Yeah.
That's fair.
which happens all the time. It's just almost every time you also have a problem. So,
Kind of like skylights.
yeah, well, I feel much better about Skyline. We've got a cupola in the courthouse that doesn't leak. I mean, but
Can be done.
yeah.
Yep. All right.
Any other
Thank you so
questions?
very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so now we are
Back up here.
back to the regional fiber to the home broadband project, which means we have 2 people that need to join us at the table. Your name tags are.
They're over there.
Yep. All right, I would like to call to order the Broadband Authority meeting, joint with the Board of Supervisors. If the Broadband Authority would vote to approve the agenda, that would be, adopt the agenda, I would appreciate it.
Madam Chair, I recommend we adopt the agenda.
We have a motion, this is Broadband Authority, so do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Looks like we have to re-adopt the,
Are you gonna just vote?
oh, that would be a good idea.
Just be clear, is
Broadband
that only
Authority.
the broadband authority that votes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
And I'll just note for the record, for the recording, all members of the Broadband Authority are here.
Excellent. That was the adoption of the agenda. Re-adopt electronic meeting participation
A couple years
policy.
ago, the Code of Virginia changed requiring public bodies to adopt their electronic participation policy annually. We did this last January, and so just need to do it again. The board does it in July, but this body hasn't done it, so it needs to be done.
Okay. Entertain a motion.
Move to adopt the electronic participation policy.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor, well, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Selecting officers for calendar year 2026.
Your bylaws set out that you do this in January or the next meeting after that.
Madam Chair, I'll nominate you as chair.
Okay. Do you want to just go ahead and do both like we did in the board?
Who's
Make a motion
for the slate?
to do the slate, which is vice chair and chair.
Am I vice chair?
Yeah. As we kept it last year. Yep.
Sure.
Does that go with you?
Well, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, it's up to them. I'm not going to nominate myself.
Not maybe,
All
okay.
right, so just keep them separate. Just-
All right. So, thank you. We've got a nomination for the chair. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Now, I'll nominate I'll nominate Mr. Whitson for vice chair.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. All right.
Miss Nick, I'm positive is willing to continue serving as treasurer, and I'm willing to continue serving as FOIA officer, if you could just
Okay.
ratify those decisions.
Sure. If a motion's required, I'd like to put forward Treasurer Nick as the treasurer for the Broadband Authority, Mr. Curry as a FOIA officer.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you both for that. Minutes for adoption, I don't know when these made it here.
I put them up there this morning. They're essentially, they track the minutes from the Board of Supervisors from a year ago, but they haven't had a meeting since then. Ms. Jenkins pulled them together. And you were going to consider them in July, but that meeting ended up getting canceled.
Okay. I move to adopt the minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Abstain.
Good call. Thank you. All right, I think that's all the
All right, that's all the particulars.
formalities. All Points Broadband Fiber to the Home Grant Project. Do we have any update?
No, I attached it was a quarterly presentation by Mr. Ennis that Ms. Donahue and I went to a regional meeting and received. It's attached to the documents. I think most valuable in that is it does include a lot of information on community outreach and their process, when they're going to notify who. I don't know that it's an action item or something this body needs to look at right now, but it is good information for you to review as well as the public to review. And I don't think there's anything in the formal VATI report that was submitted. I think most members are aware and maybe have traveled that a fair amount of conduit has been put in the ground in Castleton and Slate Mills in our RAP Fiber Service Area 2. And I have asked Mr. Ennis for more details on where it is going to go everywhere and the kind of demarcation between VATI and BEAD, which All Points has also received funding for. Haven't received anything in detail. I've asked them also for just the general mapping showing the areas of the fiber service areas and the breakdown areas. And if we could get that, then we can overlay them with your voting districts. And then you could see up the voting districts and see how they overlay and which fiber service areas in Piedmont versus Stonewall Hawthorne versus Jackson. And that might be valuable to eventually have an idea of what the order is going to be as things are built out come spring. Obviously, over the last week, there have been no crews in the county.
Yeah, I think one of my immediate concerns, and I'm going to sound a little self-serving here, but after 22 years, I finally got rid of Brightspeed happily, and I'm reluctantly relying on calling over Wi-Fi through Starlink, and I think about all my constituents and Debbie's too, who are wholly reliant on Brightspeed landlines for kind of last-ditch communication. Whereas down in Castleton, I think a lot of people have the relative benefit of having Verizon service, which I think year to year has proven to be more reliable. And so to the extent that we're looking at fiber as a long-term solution to kind of push Brightspeed off the map and allow people the option of getting rid of their landlines because they have solid infrastructure, I would like to see an effort from All Points within whatever's reasonable from a construction planning standpoint to shift some of their effort to areas of our county where people, and this is not taking anything away from anyone in Castleton, but I always give the example of people on my road in Harris Hall Road. There are people who don't have line of sight for Piedmont broadband, don't have line of sight for Starlink, can't rely on their Brightspeed landline and basically are relegated in some cases to DSL versus Brightspeed via Brightspeed. And so if there is an ability on the part of All Points to kind of start building out other areas that, in my view, really desperately need fiber, I'd like to see sort of more scattering of construction. I'm happy that they're moving forward, but now I'm going to be a little bit picky and ask that they kind of look at other areas of the county. And I had talked to Gary a while ago. There's conduit and other equipment staged out on 211 right near Gary's house. And I'm pretty sure that is their.
It's gotta be, yeah.
It's one of their subs equipment. So there's equipment basically staged right near Gid Brown and Harris Hollow Roads. So it's just odd that the focus is kind of in Castleton and there's equipment staged up here and nothing is happening. The other thing I wanted to raise is this whole bead thing, and then related or unrelated, and Mark might have some insight on this. He really knows the technical side of this well. And I didn't really feel like I got a full answer from Mr. Ennis, not criticizing him, I didn't quite get it. But early on, we were talking about something like, I thought it was 180 miles of fiber, and all of a sudden that was reduced down to like a little more than 100. And what I fear is, and I don't have any clarity on this, so with this BEAD money, that All Points has quietly shifted some of the build-out areas that were originally under VATI into BEAD. And if that's the case, I'd really like to know that.
That is precisely what happened.
Yeah, so.
We just don't know what and where.
Yeah, and I think that's important. That's going to be really important because if I have to go crawl on my knees to Will Lloyd's house and say, Will, I know I told you this would be done by the end. Look, I mean, he's looking at me. Yeah, so, I told you by the end of 2026, but, there was this kind of, this bait and switch, and now you're on BEAD, and guess what? You're not getting it till 2028. I'd like to know that.
Yeah. They
soften
told
the
us
blow a little
that,
bit.
they've said a lot of things. But they also said that BEAD should be 1 year behind VATI. We'll see. I was struck that when you look at the BEAD map for Rappahannock County, there are BEAD eligible addresses and the BEAD awards, which is all on GIS on federal websites. Those dots are scattered across the entire county.
Yeah.
And so my initial impression was, well, why aren't they all in one area of the county?
Right.
Because VATI's on one side and BEAD is on the other. And shrewdly, that's not how All Points divested themselves of some of those VATI addresses. And I view it more of you think of a tree and the trunk and the branches, and they just, in VATI, when they step back, they just peel back the very tips of the branches. Therefore, they are singularly positioned to win the BEAD money because they already have infrastructure everywhere and they just need to extend it a little bit further down the road. And that's my conjecture of what happened based on where the dots are shown up on the BEAD map. So VATI should be driving into everywhere, but maybe not to the end of the line everywhere. And then BEAD will then be extending that further to all the nooks and crannies. That's the best I've been able to put together. I've asked for the information, haven't received it.
Yeah, I mean, to cut to the chase, like if Harris Hollow Road just got dropped and thrown into BEAD, I'd like to know that.
Yeah.
Considering I live there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there one way to get some gauge on where APD is going to be pulling fiber next, is to look at where their permits for VDOT right-of-ways are being organized? I'm a little concerned about if they're using the downtime that they have now to be securing those rights-of-way, so they'll really be poised to take advantage of their.
The VDOT side of things, they're working mostly in prescriptive easements and some fee simple right-of-ways. With the information I receive daily, I'm seeing where the crews are. I also see all the utility locates that have been put out and where they're approved or pending, and there are many, many, many. So they've got plenty of areas stacked up ahead of them, but it's all in that fiber service area too right now.
And if I understand correctly, VDOT will only approve a certain number. They're not going to approve something that's a year out.
Well, and that, and when
All Points seeks a land use permit from VDOT, they have to put up a surety, and they tie up dollars in that surety. I believe, and this will likely be the wrong number, they told me it's 65 million statewide. And so they're managing that across all of their projects, and as some areas build out, that frees up some money for somewhere else. And I don't know where they are in that full amount, but it's not practical to go get permits for everywhere because they're only valid for a certain amount of time. But also they tying up that surety money. Surely, by end of December 2026, they've told us they have a plan to get there. In our regional meeting, they told us they had a plan. In the presentation, how many miles per month they need to hit.
Right.
They already assumed January and February were going to be very few miles, just guessing at the weather. Pretty good.
Accurate.
Although they were pretty effective in the, November.
Yeah, that's true.
December. So I'm encouraged by what I've seen so far in Castleton and Slate Mills, rather than being, discouraged, which we've been because we just have no line of sight to anything.
Right.
Can I ask
So my notion of how they're
Sorry,
prioritizing
John.
one location over another is that, for one thing, the location databases that were used for VATI and for BEAD were two totally different systems, and they weren't completely copacetic between them. So one was federally created, and I think that was more incomplete than the one we had with the state. So over time, those both had to fill in, and then you had the BEAD program was delayed with the new administration, but now that's back on track. So I think, and then you throw in the VDOT permits, I think All Points is in this delicate dance. And then you have the crew availability of where do we have permits, where can we, get reimbursement for first, where do we have the guys that can do the work? And so a lot of that is probably driving where they deploy their efforts first.
Yeah.
So it may shift around, may not seem to make sense, but I think it's a product of a lot of competing and, just cofactors that have to be reconciled to be able to.
And we understand this fiber service area 2 cabinet is going to be their main cabinet that then feeds our other active cabinets. And so the cabinet on Hope Hill
Yeah.
will connect to the world, to the internet somehow, which they've said they're going to use REC. That's the central hub. That's the Loudoun of Rappahannock County.
Exactly what I thought
And
last time.
so from a design standpoint, they had to go through that area before they could get to other areas.
Fair enough.
So they have so many constraints in design things that we don't understand. We certainly would like to be a partner to better understand it, but.
If there's maybe a way we can have just a running list of what permits have been applied for and issued, that would at least give us a little snapshot of what might happen next.
So we can definitely get that from VDOT.
Supervisor General, I know you've been trying to.
Yeah, I just have a question about BEAD versus VATI. It's the same technology, it's just different funding.
So it's one massive amount of grant funding, ARPA, through the state funded VATI.
Okay.
And then after ARPA, then there was what was the name of the other alphabet soup, giant, massive funding from the feds that is going to all states. Not all states are out there, and Virginia is one of the first, where I think it's $1.45 billion going to Virginia to push broadband to all addresses that weren't served or
Eligible.
weren't eligible, didn't make the cut for VATI.
So they're trying to balance funding for the project.
Well, VATI came first and then BEAD came after, and a big difference between the two is that localities had to apply for VATI or a regional commission, and that's how we ultimately applied. And for BEAD, localities aren't involved at all. The ISPs apply directly to the state and then to the feds.
Okay.
So we have zero control over the BEAD project, and something more than zero control over the VATI project.
The ultimate goal of the state, obviously, is to get fiber to the home of every household that didn't already have access. So like Comcast was the only one in Rappahannock County that if you had Comcast or the eligibility to have Comcast, you could not be in the Valley group.
Or BEAD, for
Or
that matter.
BEAD.
And there are a handful of addresses in Rappahannock County that All Points did not win, for lack of a better term, for BEAD. And those are maybe some of the very tippy top of mountains and things like that, the cost to deliver fiber to those homes, it was just too high. And then, Starlink and Amazon, used to be Cooper, they changed their name to something else, have got those addresses. I think there's like 15 of those.
Madam Chair, I just wondered if I could just ask Mark a question.
Sure.
I think you articulated very well kind of the at least three variables that are dictating what appears to be kind of this willy-nilly approach to construction. My question to you is based on your understanding of the BEAD program in particular and the fact that we had certain addresses in Rappahannock County that were, perhaps on paper Comcast addresses, but that would have required a special construction charge. How much overlap is there between sort of BEAD coverage, which I always viewed kind of the way Gary just articulated as supplemental to the sort of bulk VATI coverage? To what extent is there in fact overlap with the BEAD coverage and kind of those places like Gary's described, plus people who are just past, like where Debbie used to live, just past where Comcast went, but it would cost 10 grand to hook up?
40 grand was the quote I received.
Yeah, I mean, is that what BEAD is or not?
Well, I think BEAD was intended to fill in those gaps and to just provide another supplemental program for that. And I wonder if you're asking, is there like a double funding potential, or the opposite would be, is there a property that just isn't covered by any of these? But at the end of it, I asked Tom this directly when I went to that NSVRC meeting last year, that every structure or residence or home business will be able to receive service from All Points. It's just whether that location can be reimbursed through a funding program is sort of the question. So it's not a matter of someone being left out. Both programs, insist on preventing that. It's a matter of, is a place recoupable through a grant program to be funded to cover the costs of building out the network and the installation? And so that's, at the end of the day, everyone can get it, and everyone will be eligible for that reduced installation fee, the $199 installation cost. It's not dependent on your own residence or business being covered under one grant program or the other.
I guess I'm just hoping that BEAD remains sort of a fill-in type funding mechanism, and that we don't see entire roads that people were assuming were going to be in VATI are now pushed out another year.
BEAD
That's what I'm trying to understand.
BEAD was based on this national broadband map, and it is dot by dot, on structure by structure. You pull up this map, you can see, whatever different colors, blue dots versus red dots. So you can see a red dot is not covered, blue dot is covered. You can click on it, see who it's covered by. And this little page was talking about, we can clean up that. There's been a process over time to make sure that the dot's not on the barn versus the house.
Yeah.
And I've gone in and changed a whole bunch in the county just to, as I, poked around and say, well, that's actually the shed. The house is over here because we have the 911 address data, and we can move things around. Or if people call, I can go into this map and see, is your house listed in in this national broadband map? And if it is, then that was the driver for BEAD, which gives you great confidence that you are absolutely in BEAD, possibly in VATI, but absolutely in BEAD. So.
Does it make any difference on when APB sends around their, I'm not sure if it's a registration form or their door tag? You just have to sign up, and whether it's BEAD or VATI doesn't make any difference to the homeowner.
That's our understanding. Now, their special deal, and Mark said $199, they cut that to $99.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So I was wondering.
And so you do have a year from that, and that's part of our job in community engagement. Their job too, because they want revenue, right? They want you to sign up so they can start getting revenue. So those door knockers are supposed to be placed in various mails, deliveries 90 days
Right.
in advance of when you could actually sign up and start getting service. And they've started doing that in those areas of Rappahannock County. And according to Mr. Ennis, they've already have take rate going in that area where people have signed up.
So that leads to my next question. Weren't we going to have a big, celebration of the very first passing connection?
When somebody truly gets connected.
Yes, in February perhaps, or is it?
And they had said mid-February they thought would be when that fiber feed to the cabinet would get there, which would enable them to turn on their first customer. I think that's a good time to have an event when you can actually have a customer saying,
Yeah.
look, here's the box under my side of my house and it works.
Yes.
You can stream a
Look at the
movie right there in
screen.
front of us.
Yes.
Immediately to your
Yeah.
They changed the login website address, didn't they, to register?
I think it's still appfiber.com. You can get there. If you go to rapbroadband.com.org, you can get to the link as well.
Yeah, they were recommending that even if you registered before, go back and just make sure that your registration shows up, because there was some sort of database switchover or something they had done. And so I would just recommend to everyone that you go back and put in your address and make sure it says, yep, you're a part of it.
For us, it's just the little front end that we see, but it's completely integrated to their whole back end system, so that helps.
And if you end up not doing that or forget, you're not ineligible. You can still, call them.
When your neighbors say, hey, I got a door hanger.
Right.
All right, are we good moving on to the treasurer's report?
Just the takeaway is that there is still general interest in holding some sort of event when they actually light up a customer, and I'll
Yes.
share information when I get it.
Yes, please. Treasurer report, Ms. Nick has been great to take this on as well.
I think the most interesting document is the amount of, I was going to say during that last agenda item, not a single dollar of Rappahannock County's match has been spent yet. All Points has earned it, but when they went through the rescoping and they were supposed to be able to get money for design, and then I think the design shifted. For whatever reason, no money has been paid out of Rappahannock County.
It was my understanding, talking to Tom, that fiber has to be lit before they can submit that invoice.
With there was a few preliminary draws that they could do, but then it's passings.
Yep.
At any rate, there have been zero withdrawals. And so if you look at the balances that are available in the bank account, in the bank sitting over in Front Royal, at the end of December, it was $6.46 million. The community's match requirement is $5.9 million. Simple math tells you have $562,000 of interest sitting there that is in excess of what the VATI project would require. So that leads to the question that has bounced around a bit. Should that money sit in the bank in Front Royal, or should Treasurer Nick take it and invest it as she thinks is most prudent for the RCBA? And so we looked real quick at the earnings as of late, and it appears from the last statement that it's earning 3.2% over in Front Royal, and the money that RCBA has that it's invested in the investment pool is earning 3.93%. That would suggest maybe you would, as a broadband authority, want to pull that interest out of the Front Royal Bank and put it in the RCBA account, which the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission has said you are welcome to do whenever you want to.
Well, we'd be expected to start making payments in the next month on this.
Well, if you are expected to make payments, it would be within the $5.9 million that we are obligated to pay. And so that extra, anything above $5.9 million will never be required to be paid into that project. And the agreements make clear that we cannot be required to pay any more than $5.9 million. If you were to pull money back, it would only be that amount in excess of $5.9 million.
What's the current cash balance of the RCBA? It can't be much.
It's,
And that's
There's $92,000 invested, and a little bit less than that in your local bank.
that's
That
at
came-
Atlantic Union?
Yeah.
That's
The
I
92 is in the Virginia Investment Pool, which is a pooled investment option for all localities.
And that's where we'd realize 3.9?
Correct.
Okay.
So that, if you remember at the very beginning of this whole thing, there was $150,000 that was a 50,000 path, 50,000 local philanthropists, and 50,000 Board of Supervisors. And of that 150,000, there's this 92 left. That's gone towards attorney fees and
Right.
Website updates.
website and things like that.
So I guess my only question is, do we need to affect any kind of, aside from a broadband authority vote to move that interest revenue out, do we need agreement from our other supporting parties, including the school system, FAGUS, et cetera, say, yeah, we're okay with that? I mean, only a portion of that is ours.
I would think, and those agreements vary on whether there are any strings attached. But I would suggest that if you pulled it back and invested it, then it's very similar to your current posture. Now, if you liquidated it for
Correct.
some purpose, that's when you should probably make sure
Yeah,
that's
that's a separate question,
Yeah.
so.
And so it'll still be owned by the RCBA.
Yeah.
And the decisions would have to be made by the RCBA.
So if a motion's required, I would move,
Let me,
okay, go ahead.
for somebody that's got 6,462,000, almost 3, in the bank, when you take out the 500,000, it's not earning the same. You know, $6 million earns a whole
Right.
lot more than 560,000.
But the two buckets, if they were making the same interest, would make the same amount parallel as they went up. That magic of compounding
stock.
doesn't affect it if it's in two buckets.
So it's just a straight interest, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, it's right now better in the investment pool.
Right, it would be, the 500 and whatever it is, would be better in the investment pool. All else being equal, better in the investment pool.
Okay. Yeah, if we're saying that we'd put it in the investment pool because it's gonna earn more interest, and it's all gonna stay there, and we're not doing anything with it, I'm.
Yeah, I think that's a decision for another day.
Yep.
And
And the 5.9 is gonna remain in the bank in Front Royal, earning the same amount of interest that it's been.
It's been,
Yeah.
yep,
It's the 500 and whatever, that's going to have the opportunity to make more interest. in the
bringing it
investment
across the
pool.
county line.
And
Gotcha.
so the RCBA may make a decision in another year to sweep back interest that was accumulated over the next year, right?
Right.
You've earned $17,000 in interest last month, it'll be a little less than that if you take 500,000 out. But so maybe next month you earn 15,000, and the month after that is another 15,000. So after several months, you might draw back more money. Or maybe your motion tells staff to, on occasion, draw the money back to your own treasurer, rather than just a one-time thing. As long as you keep 5.9 in the bank in Front Row.
I think there's some concern that I have that if you're maximizing the interest which is available through these various investments, that you don't just do it with an eye to maybe we could use that money at some time down the road, because I think we have a fiduciary duty to the donors to maximize their return in the potential that the money has to be given back. So I think it's another consideration to make before figuring out how you move the money around.
And I think
We'd like to see their investment grow if they give this money to us.
And at the core level, if I'm one of those investors, I feel better if it's in RCBA's pocket rather than NSVRC's pocket.
Yeah, which
And
is
there
my
was-
question about an agreement, whether we needed to get permission.
I think that would be prudent. Is the account where it is now compounding? What kind of account is that? Is it a money market?
I don't know. I mean,
Do you have the report, do you have the?
It feels like it's compounding, but I just don't know that for a fact.
I can't. Well, I sort of can't. It's on the next page. Not that. What's on page 4? It doesn't say.
And the other
That's a
thing,
question we have to ask.
in the very beginning,
I'm sure it is compounding. I mean, most savings
It
or
would
checking
seem
would.
like it, but-
In the very beginning, we were told that the money could not earn interest. And then something changed. And then when I talked to somebody in Richmond, they said, you got to make sure that your government funds are not making interest. I think that was the quote. And I said, well, these are personal, well, donations, PATH, nonprofits, that kind of thing, not governmental. So I just want to make sure we are being
So
cautious.
those were ARPA rules, I think, which.
There was a clause in the VATI agreement for, it was my understanding for like a NSVRC disbursement that that money could not be placed in an interest-bearing account and it would have to be immediately dispersed for like a all points invoice.
So that would be the 92 million that the state would give NSVRC, but that money is held by the state and only remitted as all points claims in.
Submits an invoice.
Rather than county money. I mean, your county money earns interest every day. That's an important part of our budget.
Yeah,
Right. Okay, as long
I
as
think
you're
it was
good.
just on the ARPA
You're
dollars,
good.
maybe.
Yep. All right, Mr. Whitson, I think we're back to you again.
Yeah, I guess, to frame a motion, what's the safe number here?
Well, it depends. Do you want to make a one-time action or do you want to give direction to staff
I would
to?
just make a one-time action, presumably we'll meet again, and,
I would just make it $500,000.
okay, and then that's into RCBA's state investment, RCBA's,
I would just, to be invested as deemed fit by the treasurer.
okay.
Or the-
All right, we've got a second. Now I'm going to open
So-
to discussion because.
Who was the second?
Yeah, so,
Mark, you seconded?
I did
Was
not
that a
say.
motion?
I haven't made
I
a
have a
motion.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, the motion is to move $500,000 even from the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission account that's set aside for Rappahannock County as part of that regional agreement and into our CBA's account to be invested at the treasurer's recommendation.
Treasurer of RCBA.
Yep.
And that's the motion.
Now do I have a second? And this is a broadband
Yeah.
authority motion.
I can't say.
No, you can, it won't count.
I'd like to see kind of like a pro forma of just a comparison of interest gain, leaving it where it is versus bifurcating it and putting it in two different accounts that, I mean, it sounds correct, but I would like to just see kind of what that difference is. That verify that we would continue to ultimately make greater interest
Yeah,
total.
that's the thing you want to get at. It needs to be another interest-bearing account that is preferable to the existing one, otherwise it might just.
Well,
I think that's what they're showing.
currently, the funds, the funds where they're currently setting in the last month earned 3.2%. And where the RCBA's dollars are setting last month earned 3.93%. So objectively, it will earn more if the forward interest is similarly separated. For the investment pool, it recognizes that you don't necessarily need the money tomorrow. Well, you could get it back, but over in a pool, whereas in the bank, it's very liquid. So, in front row, so they're assuming they're gonna have to write a check tomorrow, the bank, or release money in response to a check, they have to be able to be liquid to do that, so they aren't providing quite as much interest.
Madam Chair, was there a second to my motion?
There
I
was
haven't
not.
heard that, yeah.
I think I will second it so we can continue the conversation.
It looks like it's about $3,500.
I was just gonna try to
this year.
calculate.
Yeah, that's what you're
Experience
talking
has
about.
been that sometimes when you get into you get fixated on the interest that's earned in an account, and you don't take into account there are some odd restrictions or other limitations or variations that, it's pegged to some other floating marker, and you end up unless you're watching it carefully, it actually is losing interest for you. So I'm a little bit concerned about what the account that you're considering would look like.
The account that would be invested in is the same account the RCBA money is invested in today, the 92,000, and the same account that the millions of dollars the Rappahannock County government invests their money in.
So why would they give us a greater interest in.
Because it's intended to be a longer-term source of holding money, not a liquid needing it tomorrow.
That's,
And since we aren't going to be using this money anytime soon,
but that becomes a restriction on it. I mean, just so that we know, that becomes one of the restrictions that might potentially.
Well, actually, I think we can get it out tomorrow, but they recognize the pool overall is not all going to make a run on the money tomorrow.
No penalty for withdrawal.
Correct.
And to be clear, the separate question that Ms. Smith raised previously during when we had perennial funding gaps is why wouldn't we try to bring some of this interest revenue to bear on our county budget? And that's a totally separate discussion. This is really just moving from one account to another to realize higher interest earnings.
Yes.
Given current comparative rates.
Gary, you said earlier that you had, on the front end, ran this by someone or an entity to be sure that can do this legally, and it gives the appearance of kind of pulling money and start planting it somewhere else. And I'm following all that. I just, sometimes the perception of it is you might be able to overcome it in time, but is that something we want to expose ourselves to? We haven't drawn down a penny of it, and we're gaining interest. And to Ms. Bond's earlier comment, and Mr. Reinhardt as well, is our obligation is to the people that are wanting this broadband. They've been patient. This board has worked their butts off to get it moving forward, and we're finally seeing some traction. A lot of it is timing. Is this the right time to do this? I'm all about making more money. My fear is, what Supervisor Whitson said earlier, that's a separate issue. If we have, what we draw down or what we make, and we use it in our county budget to offset some of our budget woes. That's what concerns me. It is a separate issue, and you would have to talk about that in a separate meeting and in a separate discussion, but it's opening that door, and we're going to be stepping into it.
Yeah, and it'd be similar to the decisions that would be made on how you spend the $92,000 that the Broadband Authority has right now. My comment earlier was that I did communicate with the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission, who are essentially joint holders of this account. I confirmed with them that we could pull back interest in excess of $5.9 million that we owe to the project, and that was acceptable, and ultimately they said yes. I thought we were going to pull that lever 6 or 12 months ago, but then, it didn't happen. So we lined everything up so it could happen if that was the will of the body, and I don't think we didn't have that meeting or something, and so it's still open. And so the difference ultimately is possibly a little extra interest and where the money's held. So you would not be subject to anybody's decision-making other than the Broadband Authority on when to use those dollars locally. One could argue that in the bank in Front Royal, somebody else, Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission, could somehow be involved if the project went sideways or something like that. You will never owe more than $5.9 million to that project as a grant match.
Was your conversation verbal, or did they give you a letter or something?
I think there's emails, traffic back and forth. Yeah.
I'd be comfortable if they gave us specifically a letter saying that, like in response to an email.
I do think we have an email.
But I don't have a letter.
And I'd up that ante to DHCD too, because they're ultimately the authority on that.
Yeah, I mean, if there's
and
concerns.
CRC might be wrong.
Yeah.
I just don't mention it.
If there's concerns, it's, it's sitting there and earning interest. It could sit here and earn interest. There's a little bit of difference in the interest, and it's not something you have to do. It's something that, Ms. Smith had talked about a number of times, and then it's here for consideration.
I like the concept of bringing it closer and back into our fold, actually, because to the extent we're not making a unilateral decision from this board without our co-funding partners weighing in to distribute the interest revenue, at least we're bringing it back into our fold where it will sit at a higher interest rate, and then any decisions about disbursement or application of this interest revenue can be made separately and arguably more easily and more nimbly because it's no longer in the hands of a regional commission. So from an efficiency perspective, I can see the upside to just moving the money back into our fold, which is really the motivation for my motion.
And this money currently is in a bank in Front Royal,
United
United.
Bank.
which is not a, I mean, to me, the state pool has a little bit more protection to it.
So by state law, localities can only invest in certain investment mechanisms, and LGIP is the most common one that localities use. That's the one that Rappahannock uses as well.
Okay.
And we use Atlantic Union Bank for our day-to-day cash.
Right.
Right.
Just to
But
be
there's still
clear,
that FDIC thing, right?
no, this isn't getting mixed in with the, I mean, this is still separate.
Separate
I mean,
account.
I mean,
RCBA has their own account with Atlantic Union, and so the money is totally separate from Rappahannock County. And then within that separate account, then the treasurer is shifting sums of money, it could be on a daily basis if she wanted to, into different investment pools to do her job, you know.
so there shouldn't be concerns from donors that we're taking the money. I mean, this is shifting accounts and it's bringing it closer home.
No, it's not commingling.
Yeah.
I think there will very likely be opportunities for the RCBA to invest those dollars locally for broadband.
Yeah.
To, programs to help people
Exactly right.
understand how to use broadband, or, I mean, any number of programs that could come to bear eventually. And it will not be used by the regional commission because
So
it's in
bring it
excess
back
of your
home.
obligation.
Bring it back home and make more money on our money.
And we have a meeting whenever we want a meeting, so if there's any concern about treasurer reports or anything, we can just hold a meeting.
So in principle, I'm on board with all that, but I'm not quite comfortable with the validation we have from the controlling authorities on it. NSVRC and DHCD. If they had a letter saying, yeah, no problem that we all can circulate here, I would be more comfortable. And I don't disbelieve anything Mr. Murray said, but just when it comes down to a legal.
This motion could be with the agreement that we receive a letter from.
Sure.
Yeah,
Get
that's fine.
amended.
I can amend my motion to say pending written confirmation from the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission that they have no issue with the moving of the fund.
And DHCD?
I would like to see that because it's their checkbook ultimately.
And do we
Well, no,
have-
it's not, it's our money.
It's not, it's our money.
It's their program under which these funds are controlled. And the agreement didn't have a specific carve out for this, so it's kind of silent on it, and common sense would think, yeah, sure. But without the explicit, verbiage on it, I think we should probably seek that.
I mean,
CYA.
The regional commission is the fiscal agent, right?
Yes.
But do we also have an obligation to the donors who originally gave us the money? If their money's making money, isn't it their money that should be returned to them, or they may see it that way someday?
That was my question on the front end, is
Yeah.
whether to move the money, we need
Yeah,
permission from our funding partners. I think the response is,
probably it wouldn't be
well,
easy.
We're just relocating it,
we're
we're not doing
relocating, we're
anything.
not dispersing it. And that's what I meant by saying kind of a separate question at a later date, if we ever wanted to, disperse the funds for whatever reason, obviously we would need to talk to our co-funders regarding what they want to do with their money.
And that would be a broadband authority vote.
And I
Right.
think to Mark's point, that transparency, you don't have to do all of this, but it might be appropriate for, political reasons to make sure that there isn't I had some questions initially about what are you doing? If I sort of read in the newspaper, oh my gosh, some of the money that I had generously donated is now something else is being done with it.
I guess what we could do is,
Notify at least.
I mean, I could further amend my motion to say, with written authorization from the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission, any other.
Notification to
Are
donors.
there, and then, just notification to our co-funding bodies that, we're seeking to do this and just get their permission.
Some of those arrangements had pretty detailed agreements which would drive those, we just haven't had a need to get into those weeds and probably don't want to unless you're, at some point in time, decide to do something other than broadband with those dollars.
Right, which we're not.
But notifying them, you know, would help avoid the issue of reading into the paper saying, what in the heck are they doing now?
So Mark, your point was beyond the regional commission, you also thought we should get a green light from,
My own personal comfort level, just in that they are the controlling authority of the program, that we don't want to look like there's sneaking around or acting outside of the boundaries of the program. So incorporating that into some clarification, just then we're totally safe there.
but beyond the regional commission, is there another body that you?
Well, GHCD.
HCD.
Okay, so we'll say, so I'll amend my motion, before we move the 500,000, just to get confirmation that it's okay to do so from, the housing.
DHCD.
Department of Housing and Community Development.
I'm slow on acronyms, and the regional commission, and then that we, proactively notify our co-funding organizations, including Vegas, the school system, PATH.
That's it.
Yeah, so that's five organizations. So once we get the green light from them, move the money.
Oh, I didn't gather the notification was a request. It was just the managing expectations, right? The notification to PATH, Vegas, and schools is really just FYI, this is happening. We're not spending the money, we're just moving where it's invested.
Correct.
Okay.
Notification.
Okay.
Okay,
Got it all.
that, all right. And I'll second that one.
Can we just read that back?
I think you already did. Yeah.
Now you're saying.
Second the
Mr. Whitson moved to transfer $500,000 from the Northern Shenandoah Valley Region Commission account, that's custodial in our name, to RCBA account to be invested by the treasurer at her pleasure. After getting a written letter from confirmation from NSVRC and DHCD that that's proper, and also as long as we notify our co-funding partners.
Correct.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to call for the vote because I think we've talked.
Yeah. This horse has been beaten.
Yep. So this is a broadband authority vote.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, Mr. Whitson. Open board discussion.
I have a question that perhaps is premature, but I like to look down the road and have a little bit of an idea of options if something does go sideways as you described it. What I don't understand is, because we're getting close to a deadline when the body money is going to run out, what happens if the body money, the APB doesn't finish everything it's supposed to do in Rappahannock County under the body program? What happens to those body funds? Do they get reapplied to, under a follow-on program? Do they can BEAD overtake that? In which case, BEAD would become the funding entity for the finishing the project. So what happens if we're not quite finished with all of our money expended by the time the body money runs out?
I don't think those answers are available from the state funding, the 96 or whatever $1 million it is that is pledged to the project. What would happen with a portion that wasn't spent in time?
Yeah.
That's a question for the state and the feds on how that is all going to work. Could Congress extend it? Who knows? I have no idea. This is playing out across the country with ARPA dollars, right? For the RCBA's money, the $5.9 million match, there are no time strings on any of those dollars right now. So if there might be some discussion with all points on the percent that they actually pass, that would be based on the agreement, which is the number of passings. And if the state said project's over and they're pulling back whatever portion of their money, we would then look at our agreement and say, all right, how many passings, how much do we actually owe All Points for our match? And that is only determined after All Points performs work. They submit a request for payment to the state validates all the work, and they say, yes, you did those things. The state pays their portion, and then we pay our match on top of that. So once the state stops paying, we stop paying match. And whatever money's left over, you're gonna have those conversations with your co-funders and everything else on how to do it, how to reinvest it, how to, into broadband in the community.
We determined, and I realize this is premature to be talking about it, but we keep getting close to that deadline, and it's nice to have some idea of what we might be positioning ourselves for if the body money runs out and the project.
I would say technically, we're told, the deadline currently is the end of June 2026. However, we were told by the state entities who attended the regional meeting that that was a political decision to hold those extensions back 6 months from the end of the ARPA deadline, December, and that there's every expectation that they're all just going to get extended to December.
Okay.
Now, the state can't extend it further than December without federal government because it's those ARPA dollars.
Okay, so there's some idea of what happens.
And my exploration of that question, this not being a legal opinion or anything, but ultimately it landed with, if it totally went sideways and utter failure on all fronts, the funds get returned to us, so.
And that's what
we
Mr.
don't
Rappahannock
lose the
ultimately
dollars
found.
we invested.
All right, any other discussion from the Broadband Authority? All right,
Motion to adjourn?
we have a motion to adjourn the Broadband Authority.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you both for
Thank you
being
both.
here.
It's really important to have you here. Thank you
Thank you.
for coming out.
Great discussion. We're talking about real things.
Yes. Yeah, it's nice to
Isn't that
have
nice?
a discussion.
It's refreshing to not be talking about whether or not we're gonna pay our bill, which was, I recall that discussion.
It showed up in one of my website feeds.
Yeah, that's an all-time classic.
Yep. All right, so next in old business, we have the preliminary input direction to staff for development of the 2027 budget. Thank you. Thank you. I think you were looking to make sure, we already approved the calendar, right? You were just looking for.
Yes, you already approved the calendar. We included in the agenda item notes that we collected from last month's discussion on this matter. So if you have anything additional for that, I'd certainly like to take down those notes. And then Dr. Grimsley and I were having a friendly debate this afternoon about what the ongoing funding number is for the schools.
$8 million. No?
That's not what I have written down. My remarkable salary right there.
So, Dr. Grimsley's number, and this is obviously important for both budgets, Dr. Grimsley's number was the total transfer to the schools less the 2 buses. My number is the total transfer to the school, less the 2 buses, less the $157,000 that was one-time funding that the board used to fund the schools in fiscal '26, less the $80,000 textbook purchase, less the $15,300 VPSA tech grant local match. And Dr. Grimsley's comments, certainly she's here, she can make them herself, but her comments to me were that there's another textbook adoption coming up, and I think there's some additional local match potentially for that hardware.
And we talked about this a little bit. You remember, hopefully, my warnings about those one-time expenses being one-time expenses, sort of, that recur every year. Because our textbooks are on a 6-year cycle with each subject area. So the DOE goes through standards, updates standards, new programs, and every year you need replacements, program enhancements, and those things that come out of textbook line. So that piece is really a recurring cost that changes slightly, but you have to purchase every year. The other area is the VPSA grant that we do receive. Ever since I've been here 20 years, $102,000 every year. VPSA, it's for your technology, and that requires a local match every year. So it's not really one-time purchases that they recur each year. They might be one-time in the sense that this year we're using it for a network system or thing. So we talked about that last year. And then my other comment about the 157 was for general operating for our side of things. But then the board chose to use general fund as a one-time transfer, understanding that that isn't the same for us. That was general operating. So our number was the 10.5. It was less than the 2 buses. Understandably, we're not purchasing buses, but those other items in our budget would be held at a recurring expense in those areas. So that was my plea to you at the 10.5. I am building a budget that's based on a county transfer of 10.5 in our minds with Stacy right now, understanding that we are looking at a really hefty health insurance increase again.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, understand that level funding is not full funding. So we just have to better define what that level funding is.
Bonnie, so am I correct that 10.2 is what we're operating on as level funding?
10.3 is what I had as level funding.
Which what I heard is that we identified certain things as one time for justification to use fund balance to fund them.
Correct.
Books and a few other things, which might be needed every year. So the board could continue to fund them out of fund balance until that source of money runs out.
We're done with that.
Yeah, so if it is truly, I mean, if it's a recurring cost and it was included in last year's budget, I think that's the functional conversation that needs to happen.
Okay.
And that's part of the conversation we'll have on Tuesday night as well.
Well, bless me now, thank goodness. We are fashioning budgets
As we
every
speak.
day. And so Tuesday's meeting is a good point to have a first contact and touch and discussion together with the public, to bring the public along and allow the 2 bodies to talk to each other. But any guidance that the 2 boards can provide the respective staff in developing something that lands in an area that is, not dead on arrival for whatever reason, too low, too high, or it most closely resembles what you're expecting is valuable. If we can get there earlier, then the process and journey to a final adopted budget will be, maybe better for you.
Well, I reluctantly moved off of fiscal year 2024, which was 9.8, right?
Yeah, actually, I have your words in here, 10.8. You could live with as I circled it and started.
I thought it said 9.8.
It was 9.8 for several years
Yep.
in a row, fortunately. Yeah.
You came off of that.
I came off of that and then I landed on level funding and now it's suddenly level funding is no longer 10.3.
Well, level funding is a question.
Yeah, define
Well,
level funding.
So
I'll tell you, it's not a question for me, it's Bonnie's number.
go over your number again. It's, okay, so.
Yep,
I
so,
understand.
so let me start from the total and then back out the
Yeah,
things
that's
that
what I
I was
want.
backing out. So the total transfer to the schools in fiscal '26, $10,632,127. From that number, I had backed out as one-time items, $300,506, that was buses. $157,333, that was general school operating. $80,000 for school textbooks. $15,300 for the local match requirement for a technology grant.
How much was that?
$15,300.
So you're backing out 300 and adding back in 250, which gets you to 10 and a half, I think, 10.5, something like that. You backed out the buses and you added back the recurring, and the recurring basically offset the buses.
She didn't add back the recurring.
Right, I didn't add it back. Dr. Grimsley and her staff have assumed that what is coming off the total transfer is just the $300,506 for buses. She is leaving in her number, for her assumptions at this point, the $157,000, the $80,000, and the $15,300.
And you were telling us that really the 80, the textbooks, that's really a reoccurring fee because it's a different textbook basically every year.
Right, this year, history and social science.
Okay, and then the 15 is, again, pretty much a reoccurring because it's one of those, like, we really don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And why do the kids and the parents always say, why do we need books? We are using our iPads now,
Or Chromebooks.
Chromebooks.
Chromebooks. Well, and the textbook line is not always for physical.
Right, it's
Yeah.
for educational materials,
Yes.
let's just call it what it is.
Yep.
Licenses for the books, for the Chromebook.
Exactly.
Okay, so maybe the terminology needs to be changed.
All right, I say split the difference and back out the 300 in buses and the 157 for general fund. Leave in the 80 and the 15, and I think that's a good springboard
Good.
because they ended
Is
up
that your
with more
motion?
last year, right?
Let's be done with it.
Well, I think, and it can be a motion, but you're providing direction to us right now.
It's a joke.
You're providing direction to what staff is going to introduce as a recommended budget. And there's a scenario many years where the school's ask doesn't align with what's in our budget. Some years, we're able to work ahead together and it just slides right together really perfect. And so we're getting close to that with this conversation. But
Okay, split the 157, back out 75.
She's in it.
I mean, we're still gonna hear raises are coming
Yeah.
and health insurance is going through the crazy.
Health insurance, they're telling us to placeholder 25%.
my gosh.
So it's crazy high. So, I mean, if we cut out that 157, there's no way my budget is gonna, we're gonna have the.
25%?
But my point is, the Board of Supervisors now provides some direction to county staff on what you would expect to see in our recommended budget. Has no bearing on what the superintendent includes in the budget of need. And so the process will bring those together one way or another. And what Bonnie and I want to know is, if you have some strong feelings about where we should start, let us know.
We should
If you
start-
don't have strong feelings, we'll figure it out where we think we should start, and then the sausage making will happen later. So this is just early sausage making.
Well, I know my strong feeling is I don't want to start any higher than what we gave them last year, less the 300, the buses.
Yeah, agreed.
Like that, like bottom line. And then obviously the 80 and the 15, like let's stop calling them one-time fees.
Yep.
So in fairness, Dr. Grimsley has repeatedly said that year after year that those aren't one-time costs, in fairness.
Oh, right, and when I said that, I didn't mean,
Right, right.
I was like the
We're doing-
collective let's.
But we're doing budgeting gymnastics to try to make a case that it is something other than a recurring cost. And, while it feels good at the moment,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel good
Let's,
at the beginning of the next budget year.
I agree that recurring expenses should not be mischaracterized as one-time costs, nor should they be plugged with general fund money. And we should just call them what they are, because we can't realistically go into the future year after year with a school and keep disguising recurring costs as something other than what they are. So I agree with Ms. Comer, I drew a hard line last summer at 9.8, which was the end of fiscal year 2024. I did say in our get-together, I guess at the end of last year, I could live with, something hovering around level funding. Sounds like the Bonnie Jewel version of level funding is gonna be fleshed out a little bit based on this reconciliation and recharacterization, classification of recurring versus non-recurring expenses or costs. All that should end up in a place that I think Donna's very well articulated, and I'm with Donna on this, that we gotta, as one member of our board, we gotta draw a hard line with the courthouse project floating out there. We gotta draw a hard line for the sake of our taxpayers on not giving you more than level funding minus the infusion of bus money, whatever that is, and that's Bonnie's the Excel wizard, and I know she's gonna handle it. whatever that number is, and it sounds like it might be 10.5, and I don't know if that aligns with what Donna's articulating.
Just one other comment about it. So remember, the 157,000 that was backed out was approved by this board to transfer to the schools. It was the board's choice to use general fund dollars as a one-time
I know.
backfill, which we all said, maybe not a good idea, because that's gonna then translate into a $157,000 cut later. And that's what we're looking at, so I was hoping that level funding would include that piece, rolling it in, understanding that that was the general operating that this board did agree to last year.
So Donna, what are you at, number-wise?
I don't know, I thought somebody else was adding it up. I was-
So the 10, is Bonnie with,
That was 10.8 less the 3.
yeah,
So around
Bonnie
10.5.
led us with
10.5,
10.6.
can we
but-
just,
I thought it was 10.6
We have
less
10
the 3. Where'd 10.8 come
I'm
from?
sorry, it is, that's my fault.
10.8 less the 300,000. Because the buses were carried like in a totally different spot
Yeah.
on our kind of tracking spreadsheet.
and I'm happy to see them on
Because it was committed to way earlier
capital
in the fiscal
improvement
year.
plan now.
And I want to make sure, these are operational costs. Because that's something I plan to clarify or hope was clarified next week. But because people will they'll hear what I just said and be like, how dare you suggest that when the roof is leaking or this is broken?
That's the next agenda item.
Sure is.
Yeah.
And exactly, I
And then we
want
have no
people to
fund balance.
understand that what we're talking about are operational costs,
It is.
not
That includes your raises and your health insurance, which I'm getting very nervous about at this point.
So Shannon is working right now. If she's trying to drop a budget that is at 10.5, then she's looking to absorb raises in health insurance
Right.
somehow.
So can I make a
Yes, sir.
comment? So I can understand the concept of level funding. That we don't want to see continued escalation. The reality is that there is escalation in expenses. So level funding at last year's numbers is decreased funding. I mean, that's what it is. And we should say that if that's what we're gonna do. And I don't think we can have a blank check, but we should acknowledge that teachers expect raises. Health insurance will go up, and those are realities that the school has to deal with. So I wonder if we don't want to say level funding with adjustments for inflation and health insurance. If there's some way to capture some percentage increase. Our issue is that we don't get the percentage increases on the taxes automatically. We are pegged at whatever our last tax rate was. But the reality is that the school expenses are dealing with inflation. In the last, I don't know how many years we've tossed out here, but we've had serious inflation.
yeah.
And so they have a serious lack of the ability to spend over what they had just a few years ago. And so I think I think we need to build that in. That's I'm one member of the board again, but I think we've got to build that in.
Fair enough.
And so staff's job is to try to balance all of that with what tax rate do we need to propose to
Right.
make this work?
Right.
And
Yeah.
then shock on the citizen side. And so we're trying to put all that into the blender and come out with something that we think does as good as we can to do what we need to do for the schools and the other staff and all the other costs that are coming up, and manage expectations of what kind of tax rate increase might be needed to balance those operating needs, and recognize that there are capital needs coming out that have their own tax rate implications. And so we put all that together and we throw something out as a recommended budget saying, we think this is a great place to start. It doesn't necessarily mean it's where you're gonna finish. And the real important information to convey right now is, do you want to constrain, how do you want to constrain, do you want to constrain where we start? And that's what we're trying to pull from you right now to help us figure out what our recommended budget is. If there's certain hard lines, no tax increase, we can do that. It's going to be a lot of cuts, right? But we can do that if that is absolutely what the board want to do. Or is it, we want to have level funding for the schools, well, we can build that in. And that drives some, thoughts for the schools on, what they need to do to try to make that work, which might not be a recommended budget of need from the schools that aligns with level funding. It just, it's going to be in our budget that way, our recommended budget. So it's that recommendation to us, so we are informed of what we then present to you as a balanced budget.
Well, I would
What's
say
the
level
number now?
funding with reasonable adjustments, that's where I'd be.
What number did you come up with?
So the total transfer currently is 10.86 million. We back out the buses, it's 10.56 million. I haven't really heard what else you want me to back out beyond that, if anything. The difference between my number and the number the schools were operating under is $252,000. That's the delta between what we're talking about in terms of level
The
funding.
157, the 80, and the 15.
Yes,
And that's before we know what reality is.
yes. And there's some reality for the schools on the revenue side as well. Because we haven't talked at all here about state revenue.
And their state revenue should go up. Naturally, we were in a hole for a while where supplemental basic aid cap was just absorbing state increases. But now that cap is completely filled and made totally a non-factor. And so any increase from the state, albeit pennies on the dollar because of our LCI, will pass through. That's the bright side.
So can I ask you a question about that? This is the 10.56, it sounds like is the number we're at. That is, revenue minus expenses. That's
Yes.
kind of bottom line, that's transfer from the county to the schools.
Correct.
So we keep talking about expenses, but there is a top line that is how many students do we have and how much do we bring in?
Right.
And if we're able to increase the number of students sitting in the chair, you might understand this correctly, that top line goes up and we have some of those expenses that increase, but not all of them. Am I thinking about that wrong?
Well, we can share some of that data. Now, we plan to really flesh that out more because that's becoming more and more of a question, especially with non-residents and how we're filling in those seats and what that looks like. And one of the things we have to remember is like this indirect proportional relationship, I guess, for non-residents who don't impact your population. So when they're taken out of the LCI factor and brings in that cost and how that looks. So that's the math and calculus that I think you should really be aware of because it is important. And the fixed costs are changing with
That's
that,
right.
and the revenues coming
Right.
back.
The sensitivity analysis on the LCI, we ran that, you need to be up like 900,000 students. Non-factor, non-factor. So we're not
You
gonna
don't think
change
we
our
can do
LCI based on students. Yeah, we don't wanna do that, it's
No.
not gonna happen. Yeah, so,
Yeah.
but you do get incremental state aid for each student. It's very limited because we're getting 20 cents on the dollar from the LCI formula. So
Versus Loudon that probably gets,
But,
seven,
if you can approach it from increasing the top line, not just limiting the bottom line, that's that's the way we should be thinking about this.
And they do that for a lot of grants too, right? They're finding other.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Where are we rough numbers on state right now? Is it 3 million, something like that?
That's close. I think we were looking at close to 300,000 additional over last year from the state in the governor's budget. So we don't know what changes will happen in the former governor. Sorry, the former governor's budget, which they call it.
Which will be very well scrutinized by the new governor.
yes.
Very much.
So you're thinking like 3.3 or something like that?
Yeah, it doesn't usually change very much, if anything.
Right.
Barring any huge changes to standards of quality and mandates and things, it's relatively safe between those. It's your LCI is what it is, so.
Is the Guinness Book of World Records gonna give you funding for the
10,000 per pepper.
the chili plant?
Maybe that's what I should hand out on Thursday is a chili pepper.
There we go.
No,
We've given up on the state legislature, so let's look to Guinness for.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys tracked the supplemental basic aid bills failed very quickly the other day in committee. It was comical how fast they went down.
We had two people willing to speak there.
Yeah, didn't get an opportunity. But the COSARs and others are trying to push in the background, the economies of scale recommendation from JLARC. I wouldn't put odds at high, but that is another potential avenue through which significant infusion of funds could happen.
That's just an add-on adjustment.
It recognizes that, I don't know the formula, but basically the smaller locality you are, you get a bigger bump. And so we might get $1 million out of it. and there are 43 schools that would be affected, those with ADMs less than 2,000 or less. So it will probably receive more consideration than the supplemental basic aid bill, but I don't know that it's a sure thing. But that would be a game changer for these conversations.
I was just thinking how relieved I feel right now that none of our discussions today so far and going into the coming months are speculative about what could happen. That's sort of refreshing in a weird way, that we're not going, oh, but maybe. I think we're all resigned to the fact that nothing's changing. You're looking at 3.3 from the state at the max. And to me, that, you know, going back to our discussion, the broadband context about bringing our own money closer to home, this discussion about school funding is truly a home decision this time around, without any hope of anything coming out of the blue our way that will change the equation. And in that, I find comfort, because the five of us in cooperation with you and your school board members hopefully can arrive at a solution without getting distracted by the possibility, remote or otherwise, that the state's gonna somehow come through at the 11th hour, which we know they're not. So I like the fact that we're having a very local discussion here, and that we can hopefully, in short order, arrive at a funding solution that is workable without being distracted by hope. Because we ain't got no hope about what this is gonna do.
Ms. Comer?
I was just gonna say, so what number, what's our springboard? And because for me, when I'm working on these things, I like to prepare for the worst. So I guess when I'm looking at this level funding, in my mind, I'm asking you to prepare for the worst. So I guess the question is, what do we want to define as preparing for the worst?
So what we heard is level funding might mean $300,000 extra revenue for the schools. If the current governor's budget goes through, and it'll change a little bit. And so then she's got to fit her raises and health insurance in that 300,000 and cut to fit and make it work. Now, as your perspective of a taxpayer, worst case might be different. Yeah.
Do you have an answer?
I think Shannon's worst case, Dr. Grimsley's worst case is 10,308,000. I think our worst case is what Mr. Curry just said. You take the 10.3 and you add on to it all the other things that Dr. Grimsley is going to come forward with in her budget proposal.
I think worst case was 9.8. That was pretty.
I said worst case,
I'll never
not
forget your
case.
reaction.
So I assume with the health insurance and everything, you have a worst case with all that factored in.
Right, and our board too, in our budget work session just a week and a half ago, we are of the mind to work within the confines of a expectation that there will be a level of funding from the county, knowing all the other things that we have coming, and with the expectation that, the schools, and we're grateful that our capital improvement plan is being integrated into the county, understanding there's investments being made there. It's just the operating expenses that worried me too, because that wasn't on my radar, that the 157 was being backed out too, because those were approved operating. So to me, that does count as a level transfer.
Speaking of it, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead, sir.
The 150, can you give me a little history on that?
The 157?
Yeah, when Shannon came, or Dr. Grimsley came last year, and
I don't remember all the particulars of it, but as part of their operating budget, the schools needed a certain level of funding from the county. And we had already identified the $300,000, for 2 buses. That was gonna be one-time money.
Right.
We had identified the $80,000 that was, in our minds, one-time textbook money, even though Dr. Grimsley did repeatedly say, we have textbook adoptions every year, every other year, something of that nature. And the 157, I think that's just what we needed to plug the hole at that point, and we got the money from the fund balance. The fund balance is essentially the county's savings account So it's paying your normal ongoing bills using your savings account.
At the 11th hour, there were decisions made not to move forward with a meals and lodging tax increase.
Right.
Which took a bunch of revenue off the table. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Was the 157 before that?
I think the 157 may have been before that.
Okay. Just insult to injury.
And that was for operating costs, we're just.
Correct.
The school budget had already been adopted by that point, to say this is how much we're going to give you.
Yeah.
And then it was, I think, over nearly 3. That's
Yeah.
it. We were going to pull out this part out of general fund balance rather than use that tax, the fund. So it was a different book, different process than what we're operating.
I'm tracking.
Yeah, the whole entire county budget was adopted last year. It went all the way through adoption, assuming that increase in the meals and lodging. It was subsequent to that the decision was made not to do that.
Way to swap that out.
Yes.
Which just, the school budget by state code, we're supposed to adopt it by May 15th.
Yeah.
The county budget, legally, you have to do it by June 30th. It doesn't work very well if we want to actually operate to do that. And historically, the county budget, the entire budget and the school budget's done together before May 15th.
So if you put that 157 back in there. All right, I just lost my train of thought. Hold on.
So it's basically 10.5 without the buses.
Okay, yeah, I had, okay,
10.56.
10.56.
Right.
So,
That's,
and if you operate off of that, that doesn't assume the increases that you're anticipating. So that could, I mean, that still is
That requires her
preparing for the worst.
to fund the increases with increased state revenue.
Yes.
Which might be 300,000 if the Governor Youngkin's budget prevails through, Governor Spanberger.
So I mean, and maybe you've already done it, I didn't hear it, but to John's point, isolating and aggregating the total value of contemplated increases on insurance and salaries would be an important number to make sure we lock in on.
Yep. I'd be very supportive of that.
And when Dr. Grimsley prepares her budget book, she's usually very clear to identify those big hits from health insurance or raises, and we do too on our side. We're gonna have health insurance increases for county staff and raises that might be prescribed by the state. Fortunately, and the state funds a higher percentage of many of ours, like social services and those comp board positions, but not everybody. So then we're left with the same decisions they are. If you're gonna give a X% raise to some of your employees, well then practically you have to give it to all your employees, and so then you're filling it in. So there are gonna be natural inflationary increases on all sides of the budget. And
Remember all the work we have done over the years with our health insurance packages for our
Especially last year.
last year. I mean, we now have the HSA high deductible. We do have one more switching that, which was the goal of bringing way back. But if we continually pass on to the employees that increase, this is gonna be a big one for them if we can't somehow figure out a way to absorb that, because we did that to them last year. So here's your raise, we're taking it all back.
Yeah.
So, that's,
All right.
yeah, welcome for the employees.
Do you have what you need, you think, for now?
I'm gonna say yes.
Okay, I'm gonna say 5-minute recess, please.
okay. So Jason.
Okay. All right. Get ready and keep going. We are now into new business and the capital improvement plan. Back to Bonnie.
Gary, can you pull up the draft CIP, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for your efforts on this.
You're welcome. So for those not familiar with capital improvement plan, I'm gonna continuously call it the CIP. But it is generally a 5, sometimes a 10-year plan where you're looking at your capital needs and defining what your plan is for funding those needs. Because this is our first plan, I've stuck with a 5-year plan, and I think if we get really good at 5-year plans, then somebody in the future can help you with a 10-year plan.
Wait, what does that mean, Bobby?
Because I'm not too worried about fiscal 31. How about that? So the way we have this CIP set up is there are 5 categories here. General government, that's where all the courthouse information is. That's where the replacement of a couple of one tractor, one zero turn, replacement of a maintenance pickup. Then we have solid waste. There's replacement of a tractor for the Amosville refuse site. We have a number of public safety projects there, replacement of the ALS 1400 vehicle. That's not a one-time thing. That's going to be an ongoing project where every few years there's going to need to be a replacement of the ALS 1400 vehicle. Same thing with the sheriff's office vehicles. Those of you who have been through one of our budgets before, you know that we plan for each year replacement of 2 sheriff's office patrol vehicles. The public safety radio refresh and upgrade. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the specifics of the project. 1, because I don't know, and 2, because I want to be able to get through the concepts of this, so then you can take it, try to digest it, and then come back at our February 10th meeting where we are with the schools and have some more detailed discussion of this. Two new radio system sites, additional funding for the EMS quarters building, replacement of the public safety answering point or call handling equipment. And then for the schools, we will go through we'll go through at least the funding side of this, because I want to use the schools funding as an example of how you can look through the other categorical funding here. I think that'll be a good jumping off point. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the projects themselves.
And on the 10th, I imagine you'll go through the project side on the schools.
Yes,
In pretty
yes.
good detail.
But I'm glad that you two are here, because I feel like for certain there's going to be questions. Exactly. So let me show you how each of these is set up. So there's a page for each one of these categories. The first page just happens to be the general government expenditures at the top here. At the top here on every page is going to be the listing of expenditures. It shows fiscal years 27 through fiscal 23. Those are the 5 years. The first year of any CIP is always going to be aligned with the budget. And then the next 4 years are just planning, or for planning purposes at this point. As we go from fiscal 27 into fiscal 28, we will do this whole process again. We will have updated, more refined estimates for fiscal 28, and then that will become the budget year. So that's how this works. So all of the expenditures are at the top, and then the funding plan, and we have surprisingly, a lot of different sources of funding, both for the general government revenues and then for the overall plan revenues. So while I'm over here, now I've shown you generally how this is set up, I'm going to just skip to the schools, because I think that's a good starting point to show you a number of different things.
I'm trying to make it big enough so people can maybe see, but
Okay.
what do you want to see?
So up top here, like I said, for the general government, these are all of the expenditures over this 5-year planning horizon. All the projects, all the planned expenses. So Gary, you just
Scheduled over time, right? In the scheduled over time in the columns.
scheduled over time. Okay, here's what I want to talk about. In terms of the funding of this, there are 6 sources of funding for these projects. And you'll see here, there's the labeling for the project, and then, or for the funding source, and then funding source initials. These tie back to, Gary, if you go up, these tie back to how are these individual projects funded. So for example, the replacement of the elementary school roof. For this project, we assumed VDEM funding, which is a grant, fund balance funding from the general fund, and then state funding from the $200,000 per year that's included in the state budget that the schools use for capital projects. That was what our assumption was. And then on Friday, our assumption for VDEM grant revenue became reality when VDEM told us that we are going to be awarded $450,000 in grant money for the school's roof. The school's roof costs $754,000. $450,000 will come from the state. The county will need to fund, if we go forward with this project, the county will need to fund $304,000 of that project. So anyway, you can see there the various sources of funding that we have planned or programmed for each one of these projects. Go back down to the funding section for a second. In big concept on the schools revenue and why I started with this, it feeds into other projects in the out years. To avoid having to use bond funding for the school's projects, we have assumed that $1.6 million from the fund balance will be used in the first year for their projects. And then in the out years, another small amount, we are relatively small, $40,000 in fiscal '28. And then you see here in the next three columns, negative use of the fund balance. Negative use of the fund balance is really the schools paying back the county for the prior 2 years' use of fund balance. How does that happen? That happens only under this assumption. There are two bills in the General Assembly right now that would permit localities to have a referendum allowing for a 1% sales tax that is restricted to school renovation, construction, and capital projects. This funding plan assumes that, like in the past two General Assemblies, that bill passes. And what's different this time is the current governor has said that she would sign that, whereas it has been vetoed the last 2 years by the former governor. That would be an opportunity for us to then have a referendum. And if that referendum passed, really, for the foreseeable future, schools' capital needs would be taken care of. That 1% in fiscal '28 is expected to be $1.175 million. For these 4 years, that 1% would be expected to generate $4.8 million for schools' capital projects. And what is, obviously, that's super beneficial and great to help the schools do what they need to do capital-wise. But what it also does, these years, like I was saying, it allows the schools to refund the county that use of fund balance, which then we use to fund other capital needs that the county has.
And the only downside there is time value of money, because we would be pulling from our general fund, parking it with the school, and there'd be opportunity costs, but.
That is true, but the offset of that is, the only other option you really have is to borrow for that money.
Yeah.
At an interest cost.
Absolutely.
So that's the concept, using the schools as an example. Gary, if you would please scroll down to the very last page.
Like 31?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Very last page. You're on the exact right page, Gary,
Okay.
right here. I'm thinking the very last page of this
Spreadsheet.
display.
Yeah.
Why didn't you read my mind?
Yeah. That's why I said 31, question mark?
Yeah. So in total, this is all those various categories rolled up for the CIP. In total, the plan makes use of $2.5 million of the $3 million in available fund balance that is on the books this month, as of this month, $3 million.
$3 million available pursuant to your policy.
Correct, pursuant to the board's policy. That sets aside those reserves that the board has adopted as part of this policy, and $3 million is what's remaining available, if the board chooses to allocate that. I've purposely listed this here, you might not be able to see it, it's bonds, Virginia Public Schools Authority. I've purposely left that line here because it's zero all the way across, no bonds for schools. I've included here the $450,000 VDEM grant for the school roof. I have included here the 1% sales tax we just talked about all the way across. I've included here down at the very bottom, this is a add to reserve of 1% sales tax for school renovation. In year 5, assuming this 1% sales tax is approved by the voters and put forward by the Board of Supervisors, at the end of those 5 years, the schools would have done all the projects that are in their CIP. They will have paid back the general fund, and they will have $248,000 sitting in the reserve of the restricted 1% sales tax funds. And that will be obviously reserved for future use, along with every year's annual accumulation of the 1% for school capital. Also included here, I mentioned this before, the annual $200,000 state revenue for school capital, the $1,015,000 federal grant, community project funding grant for the courthouse, a $9,000 per year courthouse construction fee revenue. We've not had a full year of that yet, but based on the monthly collections, I expect that to be about $9,000 a year. And then, as has been the practice for many years, an annual cash transfer from the general fund for capital of $150,000. This is what we have routinely used to replace the 2 sheriff's office vehicles and some other fairly minor capital needs. So that's how this all comes together to fund $38.2 million in capital projects. Obviously, the largest line here, and I haven't said this before, the largest line here is bonds to be issued through the Virginia Resources Authority. The bulk of this $27.7 million, the bulk, but not all, is for the courthouse.
When you look back up at the county projects, the placeholder right now for the courthouse is what the most recent cost estimate is. We don't know what the new number is going to be and whether it's going to shift a lot, but if the board were to go down a different path with the revised concept, then whatever those new numbers would be plugged in.
Right.
And whatever, time delay of making a choice and inflation and the latest estimate for whatever concept you go with will end up getting plugged in.
On the sales tax-based funding mechanism, can you in a nutshell just weigh the risk there that it wouldn't happen? Because it seems like the assumption here is that we'd be fronting general fund money with the expectation that the governor is gonna sign this into law and that this referendum is gonna go the way we want it to go, right?
Right. We will know, by the time this is adopted and the budget's adopted, we will know if she has signed that into law or not.
Okay.
And so then it will really obviously be up to the Board of Supervisors to determine whether or not you want to request the court to add this to the November referendum. And in order for this to become reality and for us to actually begin getting that sales tax for fiscal 28, we would need to move very quickly to get that on this November's referendum, just because of all the things that have to happen.
Which is not a guaranteed process.
Right, so I guess my question is, in terms of timing, would this proposed transfer from the general fund of whatever the figure was for capital projects generally within the schools, would that be held off until the conclusion of the referendum or the outcome referendum in November? Because otherwise we put ourselves in a jam.
And that's something I think the board's gonna need to weigh, because in here, in this 1.6 is the $300,000 local match for the roof. I don't know that the roof can go much longer.
Right.
I don't think I'm the person to ask that. It's all the HVAC things.
That's what I was gonna say, the roof has to be fixed either way, so
Yeah.
it's, so we're not really in a bind.
So the HVAC study,
No, I get that.
HVAC study tried to set out a few,
And prioritize
Yeah.
the greatest needs were.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going, because, I mean, I don't think it would be responsible for us to make the lump sum transfer with the expectation that certain legislative and election day based things are going to happen and go a certain way. So I understand their priorities and critical needs, and I agree with John on that point. So.
And the roof, I mean, we've gotten 450,000, so it's gonna be a metal roof that's probably gonna last 50 years.
So those large projects, whether it's a roof or HVAC and even large HVAC, they typically happen over the summer. And so and some could probably happen earlier if you scheduled them that way. But if you're hedging risk on a referendum, then, you know, the HVAC portion of that FY '27 money could be held out of the budget. And then it would be a supplemental appropriation to the budget after the November referendum, after you learn that that's gonna happen. Now, if it doesn't happen, then you've got some real important questions to ask of how we're going to solve the worst of the worst HVAC issues in our schools.
And at that point, then we look at a bond.
Or you could do it in that fiscal year in June.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so you could do the supplemental appropriation in December, when you normally do a true appropriation for the schools, after you've had that referendum.
We need to do RFPs for these in this
Yeah,
process.
I get it.
So I guess the number one would be the roof.
And not to get too far afield, but going back to the legislative question, what would the referendum question, and I'm sure we haven't worked out the wording, but in summary, what would the question to voters be? What would the referendum vote hinge on? What would voters be asked to agree or not to agree? And assuming we don't put in double negatives to confuse voters. Do you not wish to not support?
Yeah, do you wish to support a 1% sales tax, 1% local sales tax that is restricted to schools, capital projects?
And this has been done in a number of localities. The current law, the General Assembly has allowed maybe 6 or 7 localities across the Commonwealth to do this.
Yeah.
The current bill expands it to all localities. And so those 6 or 7, to include Gloucester a couple of years ago, went through the referendum process. And so just like the referendum that you're familiar with from Wisconsin, I think, you can phrase, or maybe it wasn't, maybe we're talking about the courthouse in the valley, you can phrase it, you know, as, do you want to pay for capital with a 1% sales tax, or would you like us to use a bond?
That was my next question, if we
I think you can
That was
do
a rock
that.
and a
Yeah.
How we
Yeah.
couch it.
So you can.
Okay, I just want to understand what voters were being asked to approve.
But this body would approve that language.
Right.
You'd be
Right.
pressured with time, because it is, Bonnie's put in this agenda item timeline that is really packed.
Really packed, yes. Where is this? Yeah, it would start in spring when the General Assembly, and all of this is hypothetical, assuming that the General Assembly approves this, and then you all say, go forward, make this happen. It would start in spring 2026 with the General Assembly approving the bill. Then in July, a resolution of the Board of Supervisors seeking a referendum question. Then also in July, sending a request to the court order, a request for court order for the referendum to the circuit court. Then we would receive the court order not less than 81 days prior to the referendum. Then there's a series of notices the clerk needs to put in the newspaper. And then finally, November 3rd would be the referendum date. Then there's a certification by the electoral board. First and second notices of a public hearing on a referendum to this board. Public hearing on the referendum would then take place in July 2027. The earliest effective date of the 1% sales tax after all those processes would be May 4th, 2027, because it has to be a
You just said
certain,
July, it was January would be the public hearing.
I'm sorry, January would be the public hearing, then May would be the earliest effective date of the 1%. So there's a lot that has to happen in a short period of time to make this happen for the fiscal '28 budget,
So
2 budgets from now.
a public hearing follows the actual vote on the public referendum.
I think ultimately you'll have to adopt an ordinance to affect this.
Yes.
You're only allowed
that's
to
what
adopt
they
the
do.
ordinance if you do a referendum.
Correct.
Okay, so it's, the referendum effectively seals the deal, but you still have to go through the process of changing the ordinance because it's taxation.
Yes.
And I don't want to oversimplify anything, but the alternative would be to take out bonds and pay interest on that money.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in my notes here, I said, without the optional local sales tax for school capital, 4.6 would need to be borrowed at an estimated interest cost of $2.3 million over a 20-year period.
Yeah, so the referendum language would, to Gary's point about Rockingham County and the either or language would hinge on, do you wish to do this, or would you prefer to do that?
I don't know that that could be in the actual legal question, but I think that could be in the backup materials for the referendum.
And if it can be an illegal question, then you probably, in plain language, try to make it, I don't know how prescribed they are.
That's right.
I think they're pretty prescribed.
Well, but
But
when you're
we'll
talking
check
about
it out.
Rockingham, they were able to have a very clear A-B choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask this question. If, in fact, it passes, effective July 1, then you got to go through all this process that you just hit there. And we're talking 4 months to the November election. They were waiting for that decision if it passes. So in the meantime, is there an opportunity, or is there, we have the ability to, as a board, say how we feel in support of this versus, because you're exactly right, you can't put all of that stuff in that referendum language. It's going to have to be, crafted very appropriately, but because I think the messaging has to be to the public and educate them between the
Yes.
time it passes until the November election.
It's
And
typical.
schools will do a great job of that, I'm sure, but I think it's important for our constituency to know how we feel about it as a body. Is that going out on a limb? Are we taking a
No,
position that we should?
it's typical that there's a campaign of sorts that, staff would run, but the board would authorize and can be involved with directly to explain to the voters the pros and cons of the choice that they're, being asked to make. And,
Maybe it's
the
much
easy
like
ones are
that.
interest and who pays sales tax?
Frequent asked questions.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did with
Yes.
the courthouse, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think it's maybe
And
help
our,
push us across the line.
newspaper will be a very good partner to try to help us do that, but we don't want to rely solely on them. You can even do mailers to every household.
And if in fact the referendum does not pass, I mean, I kind of go back to another, I think John said it in one of them, if it was a forum or the first meeting we had, we're better than this with regards to the roof. That just sickens me that you all are working in those conditions. So that, in my mind, that is the priority in this capital. But not that we don't all agree with that to some level, but at the same time, we got to be thinking if it doesn't pass, how soon can we get on this roof? And I think somebody said usually those are done in the summertime.
Yeah, the roof's gotta go.
RP done, so as soon
Yeah.
as.
And so you have the cash available right now. You have to prioritize how you use that cash. That $3 million Bonnie spoke of, you can, spend each one of those once, usually. And so if you want to match it with the $450,000 from the state VDEM grant, $200,000 of school capital annual money, and then use the balance from fund balance, that's a pretty good investment of local citizen tax dollars to get a brand new metal roof on the schools.
Bruce,
Might mean we don't get the pergola on the courthouse.
It's gonna leak.
We're gonna go to a skylight.
When do we make, I'm sorry, you go ahead. When do we need, how quickly do we need to make a decision on the roof funding? I mean, before we get mired down in like ongoing budget discussion.
Ideally, to get it done, we will need the month of June, July, because we can't have cranes and kids there.
Yeah.
I've created an RFP, the dates I can change, but I would like to have it firmed down by March 17th with the vendors so that they can get their stuff going.
So technically, the state can't award the roof grant until we finish the generator grant. The generator grant's delayed because the generator's delayed till the end of February.
Okay.
And
So
so,
the money wouldn't have to be spent till June.
So at our March meeting, could we make that an agenda item and be done with it?
Yep, I think so.
I think
March.
we just need to do that.
Thank
Yeah.
you very
Yep.
much.
I agreed.
You didn't have to sit here for hours to get a reasonable consensus. So.
And what you'll have to really pay attention to now, as we learn with all new metal roofs, proper snow guards.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a biggie.
So can I ask a question about the,
Supervisor General has a question.
yeah, can I ask a question about the funding schedule we were just looking at?
Yes.
The last page, of the
Page
spreadsheet.
31.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that we honed in on this, this 1% money, not the 27 million in bonds. You know, and maybe that means we've all accepted that that's the road we're gonna have to go down. Bonnie, thanks for putting together the sheet with the, debt service and the options and the tax increases, but it looks like that's about, 1.5 to 1.8 million in debt service per year and a 9 cent, it's
The debt
the,
service estimate,
it was an
the
email,
other spreadsheet.
it was an email from yesterday, I think. And that's assuming that the courthouse fee doesn't drop a lot and that, or, you know.
Yeah.
Or, so there are a few different variables, we get our 1% money, but it looks like we've all sort of accepted that at some level, if that's, you know, if we didn't know.
24 now is courthouse of that 27.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah, we're all realizing that's what we need to do,
With the 2024,
Hopefully we will.
ostensibly will come down
hopefully.
with some cash and,
The million from the
Yep,
feds.
a million
Yeah.
from the feds.
that's right, thank you.
Loan for $450,000, that's real money.
Yeah.
So the difference between these two, and it's shown better in the graph, but let me just tell you, level principal is level principal. Obviously these things are coming in over time, we're not borrowing all of this at one time, so the numbers are changing as you get up to here, and then consistent as you go down here. So this is one option, and I am, at some point, if we go down the route of borrowing, I'm gonna need the board to make this decision. That's level principal. The other payment term could be level payment, and this is like your mortgage, where this is like all of our mortgages, where we're paying the same amount every payment over time. The advantage to this is you're paying more principal up front, or you're paying more principal as you go along than you are on this one. And so in the long haul, this option is less expensive than is this option. And if you go down to the bottom, please, Gary, the difference, $3.6 million difference between these two options in terms of interest cost. And what that means, thank you, Chair Donahue, I added these today at your request.
Thank you.
What that means for the average $400,000 assessed value over time is a difference of $400 in taxes.
But I guess the issue is that the, option B, we get a shock in taxes, that decreases with, or option A, and option B, the tax
Leveled out.
increases are flatter.
Which is shown here.
Right. And so the advantage to this, another advantage to level principal, the blue is the level principal. So yes, here's that shock you're talking about, and then it comes down. With level payment, you know, it levels off here once we've issued all the debt, and once the 10-year portion of the debt is dropping off, we're coming to a level payment. The advantage in my mind for operation of the community of this level principal option is this area right in here. This gives you capacity in the future when we don't know out in 2041 and beyond, we don't know what will happen in the community and whether this, you know, the difference between these two may need to be another bond issue at some
Right.
point.
And you're saying that,
Not for schools.
Not for schools.
you're
Knock
saying
on wood.
Oh, if the referendum.
okay, I got you.
Okay, so it's a lot to think about, it's a whole lot of numbers, but now you kind of know the concept and how this is set up, so I'm imagining many more questions on February 10th.
this whole thing would be a whole lot more approachable, kind of for us to think about if you didn't have that $24 million project in there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you thought about it like that with, what is a typical churn for a county this size of things you need to deal with at a school or in the county, vehicles and fixing roofs and this and that, it's easier to kind of wrap your head around, but when you throw the 24 million in there, then it kind of blows up and you get to these big numbers and you're like, holy moly, how are we gonna deal with that? It's kind of a separate decision point, but, they are linked. I mean, at the end of the day, the dollars have to flow from somewhere.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was listening.
I really appreciate, I love this, that you've done this. Thank you so much. Have we seen a plan like this before?
So
So we've done when I first got here before Bonnie got here, we put together like a 5-year CIP, but it wasn't funded, right? It was just like, hey, pay attention to what's coming out here. And at most we did was look at your debt service falling off in out years, because we had debt service for school projects. We said, in 2 or 3 years, you're gonna free up a couple pennies at debt service because we're gonna stop paying those payments and you can use it for something else, but nothing anywhere near this level of detail.
This, I think I've said before, the unit I work with at the college, that lady operates off of a 1-year, 3-year, 10-year plan, and everything she plans comes to realization due to strategic planning like that. So I really appreciate the time.
I appreciate you came back to Rappahannock County, and I always
Thank
joke, it's like, do you regret it? You're like, yeah, sometimes.
What's hard is when there's not things already in place that we're trying to put in place.
I know,
That's
but, I mean,
what's hard.
I was just whispering to John, I mean, compared to your former locality where you're employed in exactly this role.
Yes.
I mean, the numbers we're talking about, the level of complexity in our decisions are many gradations simpler, I think, than what you were dealing with day to day.
So I do have a question surrounding that. So our debt service is about, kind of peaks under option B at about 1.8 million a year? Is that something like that?
It's something like that, yes.
Something like that. So if you look at that as a percent of the general fund, what our general fund balance would be roughly upper 20s?
Depends on the number
So
you use.
you're getting towards debt service policies that many localities have and debt capacity based on assessed value, general fund.
Yeah, and
dollars,
I guess I know, I mean, it's probably not optimal to have no debt.
Well,
It's
it's
very
very inefficient.
It's inefficient, let me put it that way.
That's a
And so
good way to put it.
We're sitting here in a very conservative, inefficient, no debt state and saying, we're gonna take on 5 to 6 to 7% of our general fund in debt service. Or something like that, and I guess my question is, does that seem reasonable with what other localities do?
Yeah.
Are we still way in the conservative?
Yeah, let me
we've
just do the
asked,
calculation right quick.
I don't think we will be anywhere near conservative when you do this. And the flip side of that is, as we've seen with the Water Sewer Authority, et cetera, when you don't take on debt to do those projects, what you're doing is pushing the headache to the next generation.
You are, and I think that's a bad idea.
It's a bad idea.
It's a very bad idea, yeah.
So trying to capture this and spread the burden over 20, 30 years, depending on the type of project, 10, I mean, some projects shouldn't be bonded for more than 10 or more. That's the responsible thing to do. The problem is, a lot of these have been allowed to build up.
And just so you know, by way of background, is like, I mistakenly posed the question of debt capacity, carrying capacity to our outside auditor. And appropriately, he's like, well, that's kind of not what I do. And I think in the spirit of arriving at a policy and arriving at an analysis, Bonnie's done the groundwork to put us in a position of knowing what reasonably and in a healthy way we can actually borrow with that, given our cash position. So, I mean, your question's on point.
Yeah, so in my former in my former employment, the basis, the denominator of that equation you're asking about was general fund plus the school operating fund, not double counting the school transfer.
Okay.
What percentage of debt is there? So let me just do that real quick. So it's roughly 7%.
Okay.
So the policy that we had, I worked for Spotsylvania County before. The policy that we had in Spotsylvania initially was debt service should be no more than 10 to 12% of that denominator that I was just talking about per year. And then every year we were consistently at or around 10%. And then in the last part of my career there, we were, this has nothing to do with me, it just was facts. We started being significantly less than 10%. So we changed the policy to no more than 10%. And I think that when we looked at other, Spotsylvania is a AAA bond rated community. When we looked at other AAA bond rated communities, they were about at 10%.
Okay.
So I
We're
think,
still on the, my point is that we have no debt, it's very conservative, but we're
Yes.
still gonna be on the conservative side.
Yes.
With
Yes.
this plan that we've laid out.
yes, and if we were to ever adopt a 10% policy, we would still be well within that policy.
Yeah.
What's our, just taking the math you just laid out, what is the actual denominator you're working from for our purposes of eliminating double counting on the local transfer?
$26 million.
Okay.
So that's,
That's the school operating fund plus the general fund other than the transfer to the schools.
So we could have 2.6 in debt service
At 10%.
at 10%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Divide that by $200,000, today's dollars,
Yes.
is probably uncomfortable.
can you break
Yeah,
down the
yeah.
26 for me real quick?
Yeah.
Just into,
Yeah, the 26 is school operating of 16.2. And then our general fund expenditures of 9.8.
expenditures.
Yeah. And in reality, the denominator would actually be a little bit more than that because I removed all transfers, not just the transfer to the schools.
Okay, so this is really, the denominator, just, I wasn't catching that. The denominator is on the expense side of your P&L and it's not revenue. It's,
Right, right.
yeah, because it's not a debt to income ratio analysis, it's debt to your other
Expenditures.
obligations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
I mean, from my perspective, this seems very reasonable. That's what I was trying to drive at. Not that I'm
Yeah.
spending money, but this seems
Right.
like,
No,
it seems like a
we're-
reasonable
neither.
way to lay this out.
Logical, we're
for sure.
starting-
Very logical.
We're starting from a pretty nice position. of
Very
that.
nice position.
Very nice.
Thanks to the previous boards, you
Right.
know, we're starting from a nice position.
Yep. And Bonnie has added great value coming from a larger county and being able to help us work through these.
Well, thank you. This has been my life for many years, so that's why I'm pretty comfortable with it. But none of this could have happened without the work that these two did and without the input that Gary provided for all the general projects. So it's definitely a team
Team effort.
process, as was the $450,000 VDEM grant. That was a lot of effort from Drs. Grimsley and Bolt and from Gary.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yes.
So I want, obviously Bonnie puts a lot of effort into this, and we often task her with doing a lot of other things too. And this is why, we're a small staff, priorities are important, and, we have a lot of things we want to accomplish, but they'll have to take their turn. I just
This was
put that
huge.
point out.
Why do you keep looking at me, Mr. Murray?
I'm looking at 4 board members versus 1, that's it.
So,
I can't wait to get that done too,
I'm
but
just
you know
wondering.
budget's coming.
Yep.
so we need to be clear though, in terms of action in March, we gotta make a funding decision on the roof.
Yep.
And just be done with that, and then that at least frees you up while we work out the other referendum.
Give requests now, I'll put in their contingent upon budget approval.
Yeah, but then-
Absolutely.
Then we can work out on Bonnie's very aggressive timeline, whatever needs to be done, should we go the referendum route on the other tranche of money.
Which we should know by April if the governor signs it.
We won't have to, yeah.
I don't know what the General Assembly schedule is.
It's attached to the bills.
Uh-huh.
Should have a pretty good idea by the middle of April.
Yep,
Of course, pending some special session or,
that's true.
and that can kick the can down the road and a lot of decisions.
Yeah, I think there was one year we didn't hear till after May. It was,
That's
yeah.
true,
I
yes.
think
Yeah,
with the
it could
current
be-
administration, with having both houses, both bodies, I don't foresee that unless there's,
Yeah,
if it is, it'll be a short, really short, I would imagine.
Okay,
yeah, it could be March 14th. It could be middle of March if everything lines up.
that'd be lovely. All right, thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you.
Thanks a lot. Wish I could do that. Wish I had those Excel skills.
All right, policy and procedure. We brought this up at the meeting in January with the, let's look at it a little bit more closely and see what people, what ideas we have. I did research Madison for their code of conduct, and then also Page and Fauquier and Warren for just really what they do for public comment and public hearings. So I'm very interested to hear what you all are thinking. If anybody wants, yes, sir.
I want to say I printed out the two linked documents and they're behind, in front of you. It helps you to have something to scribble on. It's in the stack of stuff you have.
Just real quickly, I think we all realize we're limited for space here in this room, so I think space is gonna drive, decision on, you know, what our setup is, with regards to that. Of course, we get the courthouse, project moving on and this renovated, that's years down the road. I don't know how many of us will be here, but, we'll have the room and space, but, so we got something to look forward to, maybe, hopefully. It was, and I know a lot of, I sat where you're sat, Madam Chair, you know, with the planning commission chairing it, you know, you got the best seat in the house, you're not breaking your neck over coming out somebody or what have you, and I just think that's inevitable, and, so I don't know with regards to a policy, you know, do we need this policy based on what we're limited to here? Maybe with the, you know, time limits, do you have 3 minutes or 5 minutes, or just some, discretion there on the chair's part if there's this huge topic that may take us to another venue. Yeah, new members at the end of the table, our more experienced people up here, that I'm good. I like sitting between the two brain trusts here. You know, they give me the elbow. Yeah, I don't know what Page County and some of the other places are doing, but I dare say that they're set up like we're set up. So I think it's, you know, I'd be interested in knowing maybe what the issues have been in the past or what is perceived issues. And like you know, Gary sitting at the table with us, I mean, he brings great value. We got to have him here, obviously, fill in the gaps and keep us focused and moving ahead. You know, but yeah, maybe the board members here and Gary and Art at the end of the table. I throw that out. I'm not married to any of it. I think so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. John?
So the seating arrangements are just tradition, there's nothing in the policy.
I think it's, yeah, it's a local norm best I can. I went back and looked at the oldest video I could find and it seemed to be, well, when I first got here, everybody huddled around this table. We broke that. I stole that from the visitor center during, when we came back from COVID. And then it just stayed here.
So I mean, so if I come in and my plaque is here or there, it really doesn't matter. But I do like the suggestion of the board being at the table and it, you know, and I think it creates a, you know, regardless of what the personalities are sitting in the chairs, I think it creates the board being at the table, you know, all together.
Yeah.
So I think there's value in that personally.
Yeah, and I think, Ms. Comer, do you have any update on?
I don't have an update, but There's a possibility of having a table built to match this that can tee at the end of it, so that could slide us down and maybe bring Gary and Art to this end. But I don't have any update, other than that vision, I don't have any updates.
We could simply put a cover over that table and turn it on its end. I mean,
Yeah.
I think part of it,
whether it's
if I
connected or away.
understand correctly, is trying to make it look like it is part of this table, not the kiddies' table. No
Well, if
offense.
it's Art and I, maybe it should be distinct from the table, whether it's kitty or not.
So I mean, I agree that the chair being here can see everybody who's speaking, no matter who's doing the speaking. So I do like this position. And then other counties have the vice chair next to the chair, and the next senior person next to that person, and then the newbies on the end, and then the county administrator and Commonwealth's attorney can be, or county attorney can be really anywhere, but we just thought that putting them at the end down here would allow all of us to still be able to see
Sure.
Gary and Art and have conversation.
Yeah, and if they have microphones, because I know for Art, a lot of times.
It's hard to hear him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bought an extension cable for these, so we could put one
Yeah,
away if you
I would
need to.
agree with that. So maybe we just experiment with reconfiguration where you get the board all together at this beautiful, perfectly varnished, restored wooden table.
That your knees hit every
We are
time.
told that this is original to this courthouse.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And that's why I think Ms. Comer's trying to get a table that will match up to it well, so it doesn't.
But in the
like a
meantime,
plastic
we can
table.
do something else.
Yeah.
I like the idea of seniority. It just creates a,
Yep.
a little bit of the speaking order and everything. So I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
As far as public comment, public hearing goes, what I have seen in just about everywhere, including our own school board, general public comment is 3 minutes. And I think I mentioned it, I don't have a copy of it, I'm sure we could get one. At the beginning of, for me, I like clarity and structure, and I think it's fair to our residents to know exactly what's gonna happen when they do take the time to come and speak and they want to be heard. So for me, I think sometimes it's pressure on our chair to choose, oh, tonight do I do 3 minutes or do I do 5 minutes? And what if, resident A has prepared a 5-minute whatever, and then he or she gets here and all of a sudden it's just 3 minutes. So I like clarity. And I do want to state, I'm speaking just about general public comment at this point in time. But when the school board, our own school board has their public comment, the Chairman Mills reads a statement. We are now entering in public comment. You have 3 minutes, blah, blah, blah. He defines public comment. This is not a group discussion. It's your time. It's your time to share with us. And it is the one part of the night where we are asked to be quiet and listen intently. And I think that is important. Again, it's different from public hearing. Public hearing is obviously more detailed. Someone might need a little bit more time. That might be a 5-minute speaking period. But when I look at, like I said, just about every locality, I look at Fauquier, and it actually says this. It has a public comment what to expect. They even ask for you to submit it in writing. I'm not suggesting that. They also, something I thought was interesting, I have only, on my limited time on the board, I've only seen a non-Rappahannock resident come and speak during general public comment once, so I don't think this is an issue, but they say, Fauquier County says explicitly, we will hear from our residents first, and then any Fauquier County citizen may go there after. I looked at Albemarle, again, public comment, 3 minutes. And again, it's not to manage anyone's comments or speech. I don't want it to get twisted there. It is to actually make it more fair and more clear, and everyone knows what to expect when they get here, because time is valuable, so.
Some of the things like with Page County, they have, the Board of Supervisors has set forth the following rules for presentation time limits. They have, let's see, manners of addressing the board generally from Warren County. They specify for public hearing shall be either 3 minutes or 5 minutes, depending on the chair's discretion. And then after the public hearing is closed, no citizens may speak to it at that point. So there really are some set rules out there if we want to be a little bit more specific versus just Rappahannock casual. And I think that's the difference, is are we ready to be a little bit more official, specific in writing versus just this meeting this month is going to be 3 minutes, next month it might feel like 5.
I think even just starting out, kind of like going back to the seating arrangement thing, you just make some adjustments and see how it goes. On the public speaking front, I think even if you just follow the lines of what Donna's just described and just start staking out kind of the ground rules every time, which is, and you do this for sure, but I mean, consistently just say, pick a duration, whether it's 3 minutes or 4 minutes or 5 minutes. Other key point, I think, which Donna made, is that this is us listening and it's not a back and forth, which you always emphasize, but people always seem to forget. But maybe with the caveat that to the extent we can, we'll answer questions at the conclusion of public comment if that can be done in a timely way.
I think that's what we discussed last month, which I like that.
Yeah, or we'll address it later. But just kind of laying out the basics, bullet point every time, I think sets expectations and consistency, and then if we need to formalize it, we can decide what works and what doesn't, and then formalize it.
Short of a policy, you could have a standard narrative in board docs for
Yeah.
public comment. Right now, it says whatever the policy says, 30 minutes or this or that.
Yeah,
You could write in there a standard thing that then the chair could easily read from that if she.
And Debbie
These
knows,
are all on websites, Warren County, Page
Yeah.
County, has everything's.
and I've definitely been on the losing end of being too casual about public comment, and so I think there is something to say for just setting the rules and sticking to them, but I don't know that we need a formal policy right now.
Warren changed some stuff recently because I think they were a little over their skis over the last 4 years. So, but they've
Yeah,
dialed
I
it
know
back.
there's some of it's
I don't know if you-
2025.
Yeah, they just made changes a couple meetings ago, so.
You know, it would probably be more meaningful to a lot of the public if it's in board docs than in the code even. You know,
Yeah, that's true.
Because I'm gonna look at that before I come to the meeting
Yeah.
to see when, and if it says 3 minutes, I know that.
Yeah.
The big difference is the code survives all of us, right? We forget where a
Yeah,
document
yeah.
is or something, and it's there. But that sort of detail may not be important to be indelible.
Yeah.
And so those are the sort of decisions you might make, whether it goes into the code of ordinances or it's just, policy or something.
But I think, Madam Chair, you can just, I think it would be reasonable for you to kind of set some ground rules and just stick to them as long as you're chair. And then over time, we can see how people respond to that. And then if we need to codify something, either by way of ordinance or a policy statement, or even less, just a reminder in board docs, we can do that.
I think, again, I'll just, not to beat a dead horse, our own school board, I'm looking at their agenda. Under public comment, general public comment session, when called forward, by the chairman of the board. Please state your name and district. No person may speak on an issue more than 3 minutes, and no one may speak twice on an issue until all present have had an opportunity to speak. Again, I just think it sets very clear expectations. And, you know.
All right, well, we can come up with kind of it as we roll, and start with that, simplifying the public comment piece of it. And even like the seating, if we decide in June that we're not liking the way it's going, we can change it.
Sure.
All right. Any other discussion? All right, let's move into board committee reports. And we have a few more listed. Thank you, Gary. Recreational Facilities Authority is mine. I didn't make the meeting, but they went over the annual budget because they had to submit something to the county. The fodder stack race for everyone to register, soon, it'll be up on the website to register, is for April 18th. And they are looking for sponsors, if anybody wants to sponsor any part of it. Always looking for that. This last year, their sponsorship increased a great deal because they really pushed for sponsorship, which helped. The race itself, I think, basically pays for itself, and that's about it. They don't make a lot of money from the race, but it's the sponsorships that really make it into the bank. And then the free fishing day is June 6th. If you have never carried a bucket of fish down to the river, it's a very exciting moment when the fish jumps out of the bucket and you're halfway down. So that's the night before, day before cure, I think.
Couple days.
Yep.
You gotta let the
Fish settle.
Yeah, the fish food fed fish believe that they're wild, and it takes a couple of days.
And hopefully there'll be good water in the river.
Yeah.
All right, Public Safety Committee.
Yeah.
Oh, you were there. That's right.
I was absent. I was skiing, so.
Good.
Anyways, thank you for filling in.
So yeah, the Public Safety Committee, I'll try to keep it kind of brief. Of course, the topic of conversation was the EMS support, Chester Gap, and is Warren County going to jump back in and support that project as they have in the past. I don't think we're anywhere with that right now unless, Madam Chair, you've had some updates or not. But I will say the meeting went very well. I think the joint meeting, and certainly chime in, was very productive. You know, at first, you could feel a little, everybody's in the corner and trying to articulate the good job that we know they do every day, every company when they respond. It's just seamless. This is, business here. It's about dollars and cents, and what's the best option for us moving forward. So we left that meeting with progress of what would be the cost if in fact it was moved from Chester Gap and moved to Company 4. That seemed to be kind of the general discussion. And I believe, Mr. Curry, you can certainly chime in.
Bonnie's actually pulled together some numbers. I shared that with Darren to ask him to make sure that the non-staff costs were on target. And as soon as I kind of get a thumb up from him, I'll push that out to the committee and the chiefs, and it'll be posted for the Feb 10 meeting.
Excellent. So the takeaway for me was not having, just sitting in the audience and looking at and participating in some of the Public Safety Committee meetings is probably more often than not just once a year, but maybe in a routine schedule of the chiefs and the Public Safety Committee meeting. And I think I found that to be pretty beneficial. There was a lot of great ideas, very humbling to see all that experience sitting around the table that could bring good information for us to consider and bring back here to make business decisions. But more importantly, we planted the seed, and I'll give Mr. Curry a lot of credit on this, and Darren as well, and I think the entire group is, what do we do next?
Yep.
You know, we don't just solve this problem, but what is gonna be the next phase, and how do we, you know, with regards to paid services, and we all know that volunteerism is an important ingredient to making these companies thrive, and, I think that's certainly important to all of us, but, so, I hope we can build on that, and resolve this thing, with Warren County.
Next meeting is not the 10th.
It is the 10th, and it's 5:30.
Oh, 5:30
I-
before.
Was hoping to get it scheduled to a different day when I could be there, but it's going to be on the 10th at 5:30 at the Washington Volunteer Fire Rescue. So obviously, the Board of Supervisors has your joint meeting that night, so your board reps will, you know, turn into a pumpkin at some point and have to zip over to the elementary school for the second part of your evening.
So that's a February 10th, 5:30 is a joint meeting
Correct.
Correct.
with chiefs.
Correct. That's the chief's normal meeting, and that's why it's on that day.
And that's not, is that another special meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Focus on Company 9?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Settle.
Yeah, thank you for jumping in so quickly.
Planning Commission.
Yes, we had my first planning commission meeting, but they said it was a record short meeting, 15 minutes.
Good job.
So, yeah, so we've got a new chair, I guess, that's running things. So the planning commission will be hearing the electrical substation zoning ordinance amendment. Have a public hearing in February, so in a couple weeks, and then that'll be presented to the board, I guess, next month. I guess probably the only action item to report on.
It's nice to start slow.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Fire Levy Board did not meet, right?
There was a thought to hold an organizational meeting, but that was advertised and then kind of fell apart with who could be there and whether. And so that's all going to get collapsed into a February meeting. The date has not been set yet, but it'll be towards the end because there's a lot of things that have to happen before then.
RSW, anything on that?
Heck, well, don't thank me, I had to back out, I was afraid I was gonna get locked up if I didn't get my FOIA and CLOIA training in. And lo and behold, it went 45 minutes beyond the advertised time, and so I'm texting Mr. Curry, and I know he did a great job of.
Yeah, I'm grateful that the two new board members satisfied their FOIA and CLOIA training within 2 months as required by state law. Thank you. The jail board, talking true up for the end of the fiscal year, going through some of that. And not a whole lot else. We did talk about the finance manager position. There's a interim internal promotion, see how it works out, and that person will have the opportunity to thrive, or maybe they decide they want to slide back to their old comfortable spot. So those are the two main things.
Yeah.
Okay. Virginia Career Works,
We don't meet again until March.
thank you very much. All right, and I know it's 10:06, are there reports? I've got the typical ones I look at. Gary, I don't know if there's anything in particular you want to highlight.
Well, I want to highlight two things of all these reports. Those are the General Assembly bills of interest. I do encourage you to review those. This bill's action is moving fast and furious. Crossover is middle of February. So each house is going to deal with their bills in the next 2 weeks. A lot of them are being put out to pasture. Some with just continue to next year. Some are being killed. So there are still some ones in there that are very important to us in the land use area. And I just encourage you to read that. I've highlighted and bolded and put red some of the ones that are kind of critical. Housing target growth targets, 7.5% over 5 years. Turns out we're about at 4 or 5%, so it's not as scary. But there are consequences if you don't meet it and steps you have to do. And then multifamily and commercial by right, which is kind of scary.
No sense.
So been tracking all those, so keep an eye on that. And as I make updates over the next couple of weeks, I'll kick them out to the board behind the scenes as opposed to on board docs. But it's very valuable.
And then lastly, I just wanted to mention that the correspondence that I sent out to the board from First Energy attached here just as an information item, dispelling a lot of rumors, but still leaving pretty open the topic of how tall these power line pole towers going to be. And, First Energy is, developing the project, designing as they go, getting feedback, I think, going through design loops. And I was told even when they submit to the SEC, there's not going to be kind of pole by pole data for us to look at. There'll be a lot more. But I feel more comfortable having received this correspondence that speaks to things like, no, the substation isn't going to increase in size, and things like that were floated out there, but still a lot of questions.
All right, anything anyone would like to look at while we're in this section? All right, moving into matters presented by the board. Mr. General, I'm going to start with you and give Ms. Comer a break.
Sure. Yeah, so I did have something I wanted to bring up. I was looking back and realized that the person who sat in my chair from 1980 to 1987, 88 was Nelson Lane.
Wow.
Who was one of the Lane family, who owned Eldon Farms. So I worked for them for 16 years. I'll say before I say all of this, I haven't worked for them for nearly 5 years. They were owned about 9,000 acres in the early 80s, some in Culpeper, some in Madison, but mostly in Rappahannock County. And it was during the early 80s when we first drafted the language in the comprehensive plan that limited growth, to the 25-acre rules and all of those types of things. And so the interesting thing was there were a lot of people that worked on that, but Nelson voted against his interest and against his family's interest to a large extent when he voted to approve that in 1986 or 85, somewhere, whenever that was approved.
December 85, maybe?
Yeah, December 85. And so I think, I've asked around, I think he is the sole surviving member of the board that would have voted on that in December of 1985. Wow. And he's getting up there in years now, and I think would be probably in his mid to late 70s, maybe early 80s. And I think that I think it'd be appropriate for us to recognize him, Nelson, and Nisi Lane for that effort. I'm sure there are other people in the county that should be recognized. They certainly weren't the only ones, but I think it'd be appropriate for us to recognize them. And just over the years of working for them, I saw there were elements within the Lane organization that wanted to develop, whatever that means, in Woodville.
Yeah.
And Nelson consistently said, we're not doing that. And ultimately was able to hand off this 7,000 plus acre property to a family who has no intention of developing.
Right.
And so I think it'd be appropriate to recognize him. I think it'd be very meaningful at this stage, of his life looking back. So.
Really appreciate you bringing that up.
And again, I have no financial interest to the Lanes. I did for a long time, not today. Don't worry, Art.
All right, thank you. Are you thinking bringing him in or
I don't think he will travel. He's in
Okay.
Colorado. And
Oh.
I'm pretty sure he won't. He's not going to travel.
Okay.
So a resolution of some sort?
I think a resolution of some sort. I think
Proclamation, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Even if there were a plaque, I think something simple
Okay.
would be very meaningful.
Excellent. Nice research.
That's amazing.
Mr. Whitson.
No, I got nothing, especially after that.
Mr. Settle.
Good.
Ms. Comer.
I just want to, given the weather event that we've had, I just want to extend a huge thank you to our first responders for all kinds of reasons, for help, for, they had to respond to calls for help regardless of the weather, right? They couldn't just say, oh, I don't want to show up. But specifically, I happen to know that our sheriff's office responded to 2 incidents that ended in administering CPR. Sadly, one person did not make it. So when you were watching the news and you see the death toll of this storm, know that that includes one from Rappahannock County. But the other one is well and at home and reported doing fine. But I just wanted to make sure that those people were recognized for working in conditions that many of us would prefer to stay at home with fuzzy socks and a warm drink in our hand.
Thank you, I agree with you. I was going to say pretty much the neighbors helping neighbors. I mean, the tractors that came out and the people that were pushing driveways that they did not own. It's just a huge part of who we are, and I love that. I wish there was some way to make a list of available, at least maybe companies that stay local. So many of the snow movers go into the city where there's a huge need and a financial gain, but these folks stayed home, and a lot of them did it for free just because they know it was the right thing to do. So thankful for all of them. I also received the notice from, it was actually, I think, Warren County that sent it out with regards to Rappahannock Electric and PJM, noting that we should conserve energy due to the storm and the concern about the electric lines and, any freezing that occurred. That, I think, surprised a lot of people. And to me, I just keep wanting to remind people that if they don't have a generator, even if it's a small one that can take care of oxygen and, different medical needs, people should be thinking about what do they need in case of a storm. And it doesn't just have to be a winter storm. Summer can take us out as well. So I think that was a good awareness, eye-opener, but I just felt like it was premature, but I don't know what was going on in the minds of PJM at the time. All right, I think we can recess until 7 o'clock.
5:59.